Chapter 0141. No, it can't be, how could he possibly be able to produce 5 million silver? Xiao He's expression became extremely unsightly when he gazed at the stack of silver in Yi Lun's hand. He was unwilling to believe that all of this was real. Now even he realized that he had fallen for the violet-clothed youth's trap. However, deep within his heart, he still wasn't willing to believe that this youth was really a grade 9 alchemist. Of course, this mostly came from him not accepting the fact that he was surpassed. Only he knew how much hard work he expended in order to become a grade 9 alchemist at the age of 20. He wasn't willing to believe that there was someone within the younger generation in Crimson Sky Kingdom with natural talent that surpassed his. Duan Lingtian's brows slightly raised. He naturally noticed the change in Xiao He's expression, but there wasn't a trace of pity within his heart. Today, if it wasn't for this Xiao He picking a fight with him, he would have already accepted some assignments and started making money. When completing an assignment of the Alchemist Guild, one is able to choose between points-based compensation and monetary-based compensation. Duan Lingtian came here precisely to accept assignments and make money. As for the Alchemist Guild points, when he was in Aurora City, he 5,000 points from Sumo, and that was sufficient for now. Since Xiao He incited the matter of his own accord, then he would have to pay the price for his actions. 5 million silver was precisely the price Xiao He had to pay. Actually, even Duan Lingtian didn't expect that he would actually encounter such an unexpected joyful event when he came to the Alchemist Guild's main guild. It completely exceeded his expectations. He was going to obtain 5 million silver without needing the slightest effort. He wished he could encounter such a good opportunity a few more times. Seeing that all of the gazes of the people present had descended on his body, the corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth held a smile as he raised his hand with his palm facing upwards. Hiss! A strand of milky white pill fire instantly sprouted out of Duan Lingtian's hand and slowly flickered. Silence. At this moment, the entire Alchemist Guild lobby was deathly silent. Everyone's gazes were upon the pill fire on Duan Lingtian's hand, and they couldn't return to their senses even after a long while. Grade 9 pill fire. If it was only a grade 9 pill fire, it wouldn't be sufficient to cause surprise in them. However, when the grade 9 pill fire appeared on the hand of an 18-year-old youth, it was sufficient to cause them to be so surprised that they wouldn't be able to sleep for a few days. An 18-year-old Grand 9 alchemist, what kind of monster was this? Yi Lun was the first to react. His eyes narrowed as he stared at Duan Lingtian and a slight smile appeared on the corners of his mouth. Never had he thought that there was actually such an outstanding alchemist within their Crimson Sky Kingdom. This is the real genius alchemist. Xiao He was utterly incapable of comparing with him. Subsequently, the people present reacted, and for a moment the entire lobby was filled with the sounds of exhaling breaths of cold air that rose and fell unceasingly. An 18-year-old grade 9 alchemist. I wonder which clan he's from. Yeah, such a genius alchemist is virtually a new record in our Crimson Sky Kingdom. Even our Alchemist Guild's main guild's guild master, an existence that's from the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, allegedly only became a grade 9 alchemist when he was nearly 20. In other words, this youth's natural talent is even more monstrous than the guild master's during his youth. And his future accomplishments might even possibly surpass the guild master's. The guild master is the one and only grade 6 alchemist within our Crimson Sky Kingdom. Since this kid surpassed him, doesn't that mean that he has a chance to become a grade 5 alchemist? Monster. Monstrous talent, the surrounding crowd was not one bit stingy on their praises of Duan Lingtian. Some of the people's gazes descended onto Xiao He and they couldn't help but shake their heads. They knew that at the instant that violet-clothed youth condensed a grade 9 pill fire, the genius halo atop Xiao He became a thing of the past. It was now history. This violet-clothed youth was the one that truly deserved being acknowledged as the most gifted genius alchemist within the younger generation of the Crimson Sky Kingdom. Xiao He didn't even amount to scraps in front of him. Xiao He's body was trembling. He had recovered from the shock and quickly noticed the gazes full of pity that were upon him. At this moment, he felt his heart tremble. 1 year ago, how awe-inspiring he was when he became a grade 9 alchemist at the age of 20. But now he was surpassed by an even younger youth, and had even lost 5 million silver to the youth. All of this made him feel too ashamed to show his face. As far as he was concerned, the gazes from the surrounding people were more like gazes that were ridiculing and mocking him. Vice Guild Master, I'll get someone to send the 2 million silver over to you later. Xiao He's voice was hoarse and deep. He swept Duan Lingtian with a cold gaze and memorized Duan Lingtian's appearance before leaving the Alchemist Guild, only leaving behind these words. If Xiao He were to find out that Duan Lingtian's current appearance was only the product of his disguise, it was a mystery as to what his expression would look like. The people present all knew that it probably wouldn't take long for today's matter to spread through the entire imperial city. At that time, Xiao He would really lose face. Kid, here's your 10 million silver. Yi Lun took out another 2 million silver from his own pocket, combined it with the 8 million silver already in his hand, and passed it over to Duan Lingtian. Thank you, Vice Guild Master. Duan Lingtian put away the silver and lightly smiled to Yi Lun. Meanwhile, Duan Lingtian noticed that there were a few gazes filled with greed on him that were coming from the surrounding crowd. The corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth curled into a sneer. Targeting his money. Kid, let's go have a chat inside. How about it? Yi Lun looked at Duan Lingtian and invited with a light smile. Duan Lingtian nodded before leaving the Alchemist Guild lobby with Yi Lun to enter to the rear hall. Kid, what's your name? Yi Lun asked Duan Lingtian. Lingtian. Duan Lingtian didn't reveal his full name, and this name was precisely his name during his previous life. Lingtian, surnamed Ling, name Tian. What a good name, Yi Lun praised as his eyes emanated a brilliant light. Kid, are you interested in joining our Alchemist Guild? As long as you're willing to join, the Alchemist Guild will go all out in fostering you. In the future, you'll even have the chance to head to the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's Alchemist Guild and experience an even vaster world. As far as Yi Lun was concerned, this was an extremely huge temptation, and the youth before him probably wouldn't refuse. However, forgive me, Vice Guild Master, I have no intention of joining the Alchemist Guild. Duan Lingtian faintly shook his head. Then that's really unfortunate. Yi Lun was stunned for a moment before returning to his senses. He didn't try to force Duan Lingtian. He was able to notice that although the youth before him was young, his eyes emitted a sense of wisdom, and he was absolutely not someone who would change his decision on a whim. Vice Guild Master, if there's nothing else, then I'll be taking my leave, Duan Lingtian said to Yi Lun before leaving the rear hall. Upon noticing Duan Lingtian arriving at his counter, the young man behind the counter in the lobby took a deep breath and didn't dare neglect him in the slightest. May I know if you're posting or accepting an assignment? Accepting an assignment. Let me take a look at your assignment folders, Duan Lingtian said with a light smile. The young man didn't expect that Duan Lingtian would be so friendly and felt slightly overwhelmed from the unexpected attitude as he hurriedly passed over the folder to Duan Lingtian. Thank you. Duan Lingtian smiled to the young man before starting to flip through the assignment folder. Most of the assignments within the folders related to the refinement of grade 8 medicinal pills, and although there were quite a few assignments requiring grade 9 medicinal pills, the compensation was extremely low. Duan Lingtian had no interest whatsoever in such low compensation. Before long, Duan Lingtian arrived at one of the first few folders among the assignment folders. An assignment that was posted 3 years ago. Assignment poster, Cavalry Grand General, Divine Might Marquis, Ni Yuan. Assignment details, cure the poison of the Divine Might Marquis Estate's Senior Marquis. The Senior Marquis was infected with the Void Stage Demon Beast Dark Nether Mink's poison. A demon beast is a type of formidable beast that surpasses fierce beasts, similar to how a fierce beast surpasses a wild animal. Only a fierce beast at the 9th level of the nascent soul stage and who breaks through to the void stage after surviving the 6-9 lightning tribulation will undergo a metamorphosis and transform into a demon beast. Dark Nether Mink wouldn't attack humans under ordinary circumstances. Looks like it's probably the Senior Marquis who provoked it, and as a result was bitten by it. Through the memories of Rebirth Martial Emperor, Duan Lingtian obtained quite the understanding of the Dark Nether Mink. This assignment's reward, Duan Lingtian's gaze descended upon the back of the folder. Assignment reward. The Divine Might Marquis Estate will satisfy any condition that is within their power by the person who completes this assignment. This generation's Divine Might Marquis seems to be that Cavalry Grand General or whatever again. I wonder what his status is like within the Imperial City, Duan Lingtian thought in his heart. He then asked the young man behind the counter, may I know what sort of figure this Cavalry Grand General, Senior Grand Marquis Ni Yuan is? Unexpectedly, however, admiration and veneration was aroused in the young man upon hearing what Duan Lingtian said. Divine Might Marquis Ni Yuan Grand General is a figure similar to a god of war in our Crimson Sky Kingdom, and along with His Majesty the Emperor, he holds control over half of the military might of the kingdom. As for the Divine Might Marquis estate, its status within the Crimson Sky Kingdom is not one bit inferior to the large clans like the Shao clan. Besides that, the Divine Might Marquis himself is allegedly a void stage powerhouse with a strength not one bit inferior to the 18 county governors of the Crimson Sky Kingdom. The young man slowly said. Duan Lingtian was shocked, as he originally thought that the Divine Might Marquis estate was just any other ordinary Grand General estate, but never had he imagined that it would have such a background. Right, how do the Duan clan and the Shao clan compare with each other? Duan Lingtian asked. The young man lightly smiled as he said, the Duan clan and the Shao clan are both equally famous large clans of the imperial city. Thank you. Duan Lingtian nodded before closing the folder and passing it back to the young man. Didn't find a suitable assignment? The young man asked. No. Duan Lingtian lightly smiled and left after saying goodbye to the young man. The young man couldn't help but sigh as he saw Duan Lingtian's figure disappear into the distance. What demeanor, not arrogant nor conceited, unlike that Shao He, whose alchemist natural talent is only ordinary compared to his but is fond of putting on airs. Duan Lingtian had only just left the alchemist guild when three figures slowly walked out of a nearby street and followed him. Chapter 0142. Where's that kid? The three middle-aged men had followed the violet-clothed youth into a secluded alleyway, and just when they thought that they were going to hit their target, they noticed that the violet-clothed youth had vanished at the fork in the road ahead. Split up and search, a green-clothed middle-aged man said in a low voice as his eyes flickered with an extremely greedy brilliance. Just when the three of them were about to split up and search. You don't have to search anymore. A lazy voice echoed out before them, causing them to shudder as if being jolted awake from a dream. Subsequently, what they saw was the violet-clothed youth walk out from the alley. Wasn't this youth exactly the target they were looking for? Duan Lingtian's eyes narrowed as he stared at the three of them. He had already taken notice of these three people when he was still at the Alchemist Guild's lobby. At that time, when he put away the 10 million silver, these three people's eyes emitted a brilliance of greed and bloodthirst. They obviously coveted his silver. As expected, he noticed these three tails the moment he left the Alchemist's Guild. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The three middle-aged men's bodies jerked as they flashed out to surround Duan Lingtian, as if they were afraid that he would run away. They didn't even stop to ask themselves, if Duan Lingtian wanted to run, would he have appeared at this time? However, their minds were currently shrouded with covetous intentions, and all that was left in their hearts was that 10 million silver. One of the middle-aged men had a gaze filled with greed as he licked his dry lips and said, in a low tone, "Kid, hand over the 10 million silver, and maybe the three of us might leave your corpse intact." An 18-year-old grade 9 alchemist, tisk tisk, being able to kill such a genius alchemist in my lifetime is really the virtue of my ancestors. Another of the middle-aged men's eyes glowed as if Duan Lingtian was already dead. Duan Lingtian's eyes narrowed as he unexpectedly asked, if I hand over the 10 million silver to you, will you let me off? Kid, seeing as you're able to become a grade 9 alchemist at the age of 18, you probably have an extraordinary background, and you've seen the faces of us three brothers, so we won't take the risk. So you don't have the qualifications to negotiate with us. You'll undoubtedly die today. The green-clothed middle-aged man in the lead grunted in a low voice as his eyes emitted a dense killing intent. Then there's nothing to talk about, right? The corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth contained a smile as he spread out his hands and shrugged. The greed-clothed middle-aged man frowned, as Duan Lingtian being so composed even until now made him feel apprehensive, and his face sank unconsciously as he shouted, in a low voice, "Kill him. Anything can happen at any time." Instantly, the three middle-aged men moved out in unison, and above each of them appeared tens of ancient mammoth silhouettes. They were obviously three origin core martial artists. Duan Lingtian's eyes focused as he raised his arm and said, in a low voice, "Little Black." Whoosh! Instantly, a black bolt of lightning flashed out of Duan Lingtian's sleeve and circled around him before bringing about three dazzling and resplendent strands of fresh blood as it dropped onto Duan Lingtian's hand. It was a black, single-horned little python that was flicking its tongue, seeming to be seeking credit from Duan Lingtian. Bang, bang, bang. The three middle-aged men that were about to attack Duan Lingtian instantly dropped to the ground dead. On each of their chests was a tiny, bloody hole which was unceasingly spouting out fresh blood. The green-clothed middle-aged man was still slightly conscious. He glared at the violet-clothed youth, who was teasing the little black python, before struggling for a moment, but it was to no avail and he ended up dying in despair. There was only one thought in his mind before he died. If the heavens were to give him a chance to do it all over again, he would absolutely not throw away the lives of himself and his 2 brothers for 10 million silver. But unfortunately, it was all too late. Little fellow, all you did was kill 3 origin core martial artists. Is that something to be so complacent about? Duan Lingtian rubbed the small head of the little black python with a gaze filled with warmth before putting it back into his sleeve. I gave you all a chance, but unfortunately, you didn't cherish it. Duan Lingtian's gaze locked onto the 3 corpses for a bit, and the corners of his mouth curled into a vicious smile. When he left, Duan Lingtian's gaze descended upon the end of the alley ahead. He seemed to have noticed something. He glanced deeply at that direction before turning around and leaving. After Duan Lingtian left, a figure slowly walked out of the end of the alley. The figure's eyes were filled with a sense of astonishment. Did he notice me? How could that be possible? Even that 4th-level nascent soul fierce beast beside him didn't notice me. Maybe it's just my misconception. However, I really worried for nothing, and I never imagined that he would have such a formidable fierce beast to protect him, the middle-aged man muttered to himself. Looking at his appearance, wasn't it precisely the Alchemist Guild's main guild's vice-guild master, Yi Lun? Infected with the dark nether minx poison. That assignment was posted 3 years ago as well. If that senior marquis is a martial artist at the void-prying stage or above, then he might still be barely hanging on now. If he isn't, then I fear he's gone to heaven long ago. I may as well go ask. Duan Lingtian didn't return home after leaving the alley but instead inquired about the whereabouts of the Divine Might Marquis estate before heading over. As expected of an existence that was equally as famous as the imperial city's large clans, such as the Duan clan and the Shao clan. The entire Divine Might Marquis estate encompassed a vast area of land and was extraordinarily grandiose, giving people an unconscious feeling that it was boundless. At the Divine Might Marquis estate's main gate, Duan Lingtian was stopped by 4 soldiers in light armor. The Divine Might Marquis is worthy to be called a Grand General, so his estate guards are veteran soldiers that have bathed in blood on the battlefield. Duan Lingtian felt a familiar aura on the 4 middle-aged soldiers, the aura of bloody slaughter from the battlefield. Who are you? A soldier in light armor glanced at Duan Lingtian before shouting a question in a stern voice. Duan Lingtian's brows raised as he slowly spoke. Who I am isn't important. I came here because I wanted to ask you all one thing. Is the senior marquis of your Divine Might Marquis estate still alive? As far as Duan Lingtian was concerned, as long as the senior marquis was still alive, then he had a chance. He didn't, however, think that anyone would have cured the senior marquis of his poison during these 3 years, as the demon beast Dark Nether Mink wasn't a poison that just anyone could cure. Ignorant kid, you actually dare curse our senior marquis? The expressions of the 4 soldiers turned grim and the auras of slaughter on their bodies increased explosively. They were about to attack Duan Lingtian. However, what Duan Lingtian said next made them stop in their tracks. I'm here to help your senior marquis cure his poison. Duan Lingtian had a carefree expression as he slowly spoke. What Duan Lingtian said caused the 4 armored soldiers to glance at each other, and after a moment, one of them turned around to enter the Divine Might Marquis estate. Wait a moment, my brother has gone to report to the Marquis, one of the armored soldiers said to Duan Lingtian. Although he felt that what this youth said wasn't really believable, he still didn't dare neglect him. If the youth had a remarkable figure behind him and they were to offend the youth, then it would also mean that they'd offended the remarkable figure. If that remarkable figure were to really have the ability to cure the poison of the senior marquis but refused due to their disrespect, then their losses would outweigh their gains. Moreover, he noticed that although this violet-clothed youth's appearance was ordinary, his movements were filled with the bearings of a remarkable figure, so he obviously wasn't an ordinary youth. Duan Lingtian's current appearance after disguising himself was indeed an extremely ordinary face, one that would be easily lost within a crowd. In next to no time, the soldier that went to report Duan Lingtian's arrival exited the estate and respectfully said to Duan Lingtian, "Young master, the Marquis requests your presence." Duan Lingtian nodded before following behind the soldier and entering the Divine Might Marquis estate. Within the Divine Might Marquis estate's audience hall, a robust middle-aged man with a dignified appearance wore casual clothes as he paced back and forth. "Father, didn't the soldier say that the person who came was just a youth? Can he really help cure grandfather's poison?" A young man around the age of 25 that had an imposing appearance spoke with a tone filled with doubt. "Fen, 3 years ago when your grandfather was poisoned, even the Alchemist Guild's main guild master, that grade 6 alchemist, wasn't able to help. After that, even though our Divine Might Marquis estate pledged a heavy promise, not one person came. If your grandfather continues to delay the poison within him, he probably won't be able to live another year. Therefore, no matter what, I still want to try. Moreover, how do you know that there isn't a remarkable figure behind that youth? The robust middle-aged man was precisely the current Divine Might Marquis of the Crimson Sky Kingdom, the Cavalry Grand General, Ni Yuan. Ordinarily, even when he met the Emperor of Crimson Sky Kingdom, he had not once lost his composure like this. That's true, there's no harm in trying. If he really can cure grandfather's poison, I, Ni Fen, will be deeply grateful. The young man nodded with a flickering gaze. The person he respected the most in his entire life was his grandfather, the figure that once shook the entire Crimson Sky Kingdom and was conferred the rank of nobility by the Emperor. That was how he became the Divine Might Marquis. In a manner of speaking, the glory of the Divine Might Marquis estate was built up solely by his grandfather. Marquis, I've brought him. The voice of the soldier sounded from outside the audience hall. Divine Might Marquis Ni Yuan's footsteps stopped when he heard the soldier's voice, and his gaze moved like lightning to look off far into the distance outside the audience hall. Ask him in. The moment Duan Lingtian walked into the audience hall, he saw a robust middle-aged man with an extraordinary imposing manner. He should be the current Divine Might Marquis, the Cavalry Grand General, Ni Yuan, E.H. Wasn't he supposed to be a void stage powerhouse comparable to the 18 county governors? He probably hasn't experienced the 6-9 lightning tribulation and at most is in existence at the 9th level of the nascent soul stage, or half a step into the void stage, Duan Lingtian thought in his heart. Relying on the memories of rebirth Martial Emperor, he saw through the middle-aged man's cultivation but with a glance. Divine Might Marquis. Duan Lingtian slowly walked in and stood not far from the Divine Might Marquis as he lightly smiled. This could be considered his way of showing respect. Audacious. Just at this moment, an explosive shout sounded from behind the Divine Might Marquis. Duan Lingtian glanced over to see a young man who had a 50-60% resemblance to the Divine Might Marquis. His eyes were wide open as he glared at Duan Lingtian. Junior Marquis, I wonder where I have been audacious. Duan Lingtian lightly smiled, as he guessed the identity of the young man. You meet the Divine Might Marquis, the Cavalry Grand General, but you actually dare to not bow. Is this not audacious of you? The young man asked, in a low voice. Junior Marquis, what you say is incorrect. The most important in bowing is sincerity. If there is no respect in my heart and I bow insincerely, what use is that? Could it be that Junior Marquis likes an insincere bow? Duan Lingtian shook his head with a laugh. Chapter 0143. You're arguing irrationally. Ni Fen was flustered and exasperated when he heard Duan Lingtian's difficult-to-refute words. Enough, Fen, what this little brother said isn't without its logic. The Divine Might Marquis Ni Yuan spoke before looking over to Duan Lingtian with a focused gaze. Little brother, do you really have a way to cure the Dark Nether Minx poison? Duan Lingtian lightly smiled. Marquis, the current me doesn't have the ability to completely cure the Dark Nether Minx poison within the senior Marquis yet. Humph, father, I told you, even the Alchemist Guild's main guild master was helpless against grandfather's poison, how could a kid like him have a way? Ni Fen's face sank when he heard what Duan Lingtian said. Fen, shut up. Ni Yuan glared at Ni Fen before gazing once more at Duan Lingtian and asking, little brother, what do you mean by what you said? Duan Lingtian shrugged as he slowly said, the meaning is. I can temporarily cure a portion of the Dark Nether Minx toxic poison for the senior Marquis, whereas the other portion would need to wait until I've become a grade 8 alchemist. Grade 8 alchemist? The father and son pair were both dumbstruck, then they sized up the violet-clothed youth in front of them. This kid only looks to be around the age of 18, but he actually talked nonsense about becoming a grade 8 alchemist. Even if he can become a grade 8 alchemist, when will that be? Who could afford to wait? Kid, our Divine Might Marquis estate doesn't have the time to fool around with you. Grade 8 alchemist, to think you would dare to utter such nonsense. Even if it's just to become a grade 9 alchemist, I wonder how many more years it would. Ni Fen had a displeased expression, but he wasn't able to finish what he wanted to say before being utterly dumbstruck and standing there like a log. Only because in the movement of lifting his hand, a grade 9 pill fire ignited on Duan Lingtian's palm. Ni Yuan's eyes shone, an 18-year-old grade 9 alchemist. This youth is virtually a bigger monster than that Shao clan's genius alchemist, Shao He. It was unknown, however, how Ni Yuan's expression would be if he knew that not too long ago, Duan Lingtian had made fun of Shao He in the Alchemist Guild and even duped Shao He of 5 million silver. I will surely become a grade 8 alchemist within 2 years. Before that, I can cure the toxic poison within the Senior Marquis's internal organs and allow the Senior Marquis to be rid of any pains from the toxic poison's flare. Once I've become a grade 8 alchemist, I can completely cure the Senior Marquis's poison, and furthermore cure his void-prying stage strength. Duan Lingtian's tone was clear and firm, containing an extremely strong confidence. Ni Yuan took a deep breath before he asking, in a low voice, how did you know that my father was a void-prying stage martial artist? The Senior Marquis couldn't have survived until now if it wasn't for him being a void-prying martial artist. If I'm not wrong, the Senior Marquis's health is already on its last leg, and if he doesn't find a way to cure the poison within his internal organs, he probably won't last a year, Duan Lingtian slowly said. Ni Fen was slightly moved. He never would have thought that this youth that seemed 7 or 8 years younger than him would actually have such skill. The matter of his grandfather, the Senior Marquis of the Divine Might Marquis estate, being unable to last another year was something that only a few people knew of even within the entire Divine Might Marquis estate. But this youth was actually able to deduce it so accurately. Little brother, I still don't know what your name is. Ni Yuan suppressed the excitement in his heart, as he now nearly completely believed what Duan Lingtian said. An 18-year-old grade 9 alchemist might really be able to make a miracle happen. Or maybe, an 18-year-old grade 9 alchemist was the miracle itself. Lingtian, Duan Lingtian slowly said. He similarly didn't proclaim his true name in front of the Divine Might Marquis. Lingtian. Unexpectedly, however, Ni Yuan seemed to be dazed upon hearing his name, seeming to have thought of something as he sighed. Then he looked at Duan Lingtian and asked, Brother Lingtian, how about I take you to see my father right now? Duan Lingtian nodded. Ni Fen's gaze flickered as he stared at Duan Lingtian for a moment with a weird expression before lightly shaking his head. Before long, Duan Lingtian met the Senior Marquis in the rear courtyard of the Divine Might Marquis estate. The old man wore a grey robe, and due to being poisoned for many years, he seemed sickly to the point that it gave the illusion that a gust of wind would be able to blow him down. But even then, a domineering and dignified presence was emitted from the old man's brows, seeming to recount his glorious past. Father. Ni Yuan respectfully bowed the moment he arrived in front of the old man. Grandfather. Ni Fen was reverent and respectful as well. Senior Marquis. Duan Lingtian followed up and smiled lightly to the old man. This is. The old man's murky eyes abruptly shone when they saw Duan Lingtian, his gaze seeming to be able to see through everything. Father, this is Brother Lingtian. He's here to cure your poison, Ni Yuan said respectfully. He had always held his father in reverence. Even though his father wasn't as renowned compared to all those years ago, his father was still the towering colossal mountain within his heart. Oh, the old man's eyes emitted a trace of amazement. He understood his son and thus knew that his son wasn't the type of person to shoot off at random. Since the youth was able to arrive here, then it showed that his son believed in this youth. Duan Lingtian casually acted like he put his hand into his pockets before withdrawing a paper and brush from his spatial ring. He wrote down some medicinal materials on it before passing it over to Ni Yuan. Marquis, prepare these medicinal materials, and after it's done, I'll refine a poison curing pill for the Senior Marquis. Refine a medicinal pill? The old man's gaze focused and then he asked, in a slightly surprised tone, Kid, you're an alchemist. Grandfather, despite Brother Lingtian's young age, he's a grade 9 alchemist, Ni Fen said with a light smile. Grade 9 alchemist, not bad, not bad. The old man nodded continuously as he looked at Duan Lingtian, his tone filled with a heartfelt praise. An 18-year-old grade 9 alchemist, even his tranquil innermost being was startled. Ni Fen followed Ni Yuan and left the rear courtyard, as they went to prepare the medicinal materials. Hey, Fen, tell me, how nice would it be if Brother Lingtian was the son of your uncle Ru Feng? On the way, Ni Yuan abruptly sighed. Father, they only just have the same name. Moreover, Brother Lingtian is surnamed Ling, and Uncle Ru Feng's son should be called Duan Lingtian. Ni Fen shook his head. He couldn't help but think back to that unparalleled genius martial artist of the Duan clan. But unfortunately, the heavens were jealous of outstanding talent, so they gave them a rocky road to travel through. I don't know why, but when I see him, I have this kind of intimate feeling. If it wasn't for me going out to battle that year, how would I have let sister-in-law and little Tien leave the Duan clan? But unfortunately, I never once asked Rufeng about sister-in-law's background, and although that Duan clan fourth brother knows of her background, he's unwilling to say. I virtually have no way of tracking her and the child down. So many years have passed, I wonder how the two of them are doing. Ni Yuan had a face full of guilt and regret. Don't worry, father. Aunt Ru and little Tien are be fine, as the heavens protect good people, Ni Fen consoled. Little Tien, that child should have grown up by now and should probably be around the same age as brother Ling Tien. Fen, do you think it's possible that they might be the same person? Father, don't overthink things. Think about it, Uncle Rufeng had an elegant and handsome appearance, even Aunt Ru had a drop-dead gorgeous appearance. How could their child have such an ordinary appearance? It's only just a coincidence. Moreover, brother Ling Tien isn't surnamed Duan. That's true as well. The child of Rufeng and sister-in-law would surely have an exceptional appearance. In the rear courtyard, Duan Ling Tien and the old man sat facing each other. Senior Marquis, according to my knowledge, the dark nether mink wouldn't attack humans on its own accord, so how did you come into conflict with it? Duan Ling Tien asked the old man in doubt. Brother Ling Tien, you even know the habits of the dark nether mink. The old man was slightly surprised, and the feeling that the youth before him wasn't simple became even stronger. You're right, the dark nether mink wouldn't attack me of its own accord, but at the time I urgently needed a spirit fruit that the dark nether mink was guarding, so I could only take a risk and force it to leave. In the end, although it left, it also bit me. Luckily, I was able to smoothly obtain that spirit fruit. That spirit fruit is very important to you? Duan Ling Tien asked. Yes, extremely important. Without it, great misfortune would have befallen my wife. The old man slowly nodded. The old man didn't give any details, and Duan Ling Tien didn't inquire any further, as everyone had their own secrets. Although, he was very curious about what spirit fruit the dark nether mink guarded that would actually make the old man risk his life. Looks like Senior Marquis is not one bit regretful towards this matter, Duan Ling Tien said with a light smile. In life, there are things you must do and there are things you mustn't. As far as I'm concerned, as long my family is safe and sound, it doesn't matter even if I die. The old man lightly shook his head with a carefree expression. At this moment, even Duan Ling Tien couldn't help but be aroused with admiration. This old man is worthy of respect. Don't worry, Senior Marquis, the toxic poison within your inner organs can be cured as soon as the medicinal pill is refined, and at that time, although you still won't be able to use your origin energy, you can still live like an ordinary person and not be affected by the pain from the toxic poison flares, Duan Ling Tien slowly said. Then I'll thank brother Ling Tien in advance. The old man nodded with a smile, and deep with his eyes, a trace of respect flashed by. Maybe in terms of the martial Dao he once stood at the peak of the Crimson Sky Kingdom and looked down upon everyone in his surroundings. But in terms of the Dao of alchemy, he couldn't help but admire the youth before him. A grade 9 alchemist at the age of merely 18, such natural talent was utterly astounding. Before long, Ni Yuan and his son finished preparing the medicinal materials Duan Ling Tien requested. Duan Ling Tien was free from concern as he directly withdrew his cauldron in front of the three Ni family members and started refining the medicinal pill. Although the three of them were outsiders of the Tao of alchemy, Duan Ling Tien's practiced movements made it seem as if the gods were helping him. This became an eye-opener to them and caused respect to be aroused within their hearts. After 2 hours, Duan Ling Tien focused and calmed himself before his hand struck down onto the cauldron. 3 medicinal pills that had streams of light revolving around them instantly flew out of the cauldron before falling into his hand. The medicinal pill he refined this time was the spirit cleansing pill. It was the rebirth martial emperor's masterpiece of his lifetime and was able to cure a myriad of poisons. Although the old man's poison was formidable, it was still inferior to the origin-sealing parasite Shang Quan was infected with, and would thus only require a grade 8 spirit cleansing pill to fully cure the poison. Whereas Shang Quan's poison, on the other hand, would require a grade 7 spirit cleansing pill to be cured. Senior Marquis, consume these 3 medicinal pills over the course of 3 months. Duan Ling Tien passed over the medicinal pills to the old man. Chapter 0144. All right. The old man received the medicinal pills with a smile and directly consumed one of them. After a short moment, the old man's gaze shone. What a miraculous medicinal pill, the medicinal strength has only just dissolved and I already feel much more comfortable. Brother Ling Tian, what medicinal pill is this? The spirit cleansing pill. Duan Ling Tian lightly smiled before bidding his farewell to the old man and returning to the Divine Might Marquis Estate's audience hall with Ni Yuan and his son. Brother Ling Tian, no words can express my gratitude. In the future, if you ever have any requests, as long as it's within the power of my Divine Might Marquis Estate, I will take responsibility without question. The Divine Might Marquis Ni Yuan glanced at Duan Ling Tian with a serious expression as he pledged. Marquis, you're too kind. Duan Ling Tian lightly smiled. He came to the Divine Might Marquis Estate to help the senior Marquis cure his poison exactly for this promise, as he deeply knew how important this promise was. At a critical juncture, it would even be able to save his life. Although he had only been at the Imperial City for a month, he had already made two formidable enemies, the Duan clan's second master and the Imperial family's fifth prince. Although he had never thought of using the power of the Divine Might Marquis Estate to deal with them, he still had to leave a path for himself to retreat. The relationship with the Divine Might Marquis Estate was something that he wouldn't make use of lightly and would keep as a last resort. Ni Yuan ordered Ni Fen to personally send Duan Ling Tian out. Brother Ling Tian, in my entire life, I seldom admire others besides my grandfather and father. Needless to say, you're the third person that I truly admire from my heart, as you've not only become a grade 9 alchemist at the young age of 18, you're even able to refine the medicinal pill to cure the poison of a dark nether mink. Ni Fen couldn't help but sigh. He himself was an extraordinary young man within the Imperial City, and at a young age his cultivation had stepped into the origin core stage. Combined with his impressive family background, he was an existence that did as he pleased within the entire Imperial City, but even then he still couldn't help but admire Duan Ling Tian. He was deeply aware that a genius alchemist like Duan Ling Tian would absolutely not be limited to the Crimson Sky Kingdom in the future and would sooner or later become a formidable existence he had to look up to. Junior Marquis, you're too kind. Your natural talent in the martial Dao isn't any worse. Duan Ling Tian modestly smiled. Before long, Ni Fen sent Duan Ling Tian out of the Divine Might Marquis Estate. When the four soldiers noticed that the junior Marquis personally sent the youth out, they were so shocked that cold sweat flowed from their bodies. Luckily, we didn't defend this youth earlier, or else we would have really made a grave mistake. Brother Ling Tian, in the future, if you're faced with any troubles within the Imperial City, you can come see me at any time. I dare not speak about other places, but in the Imperial City, there aren't many things that I can't settle. Before going their separate ways, Ni Fen smiled to Duan Ling Tian and made this promise. If it really comes to that, I will surely not hold back. Duan Ling Tian nodded with a smile and bid his farewells before turning and leaving. Only after Duan Ling Tian's figure disappeared into the distance did Ni Fen turn around and return to the Divine Might Marquis Estate. The four soldiers at the gate glanced at each other with gazes that emitted astonishment. I didn't hear wrong, right? The junior Marquis actually gave that youth such an exaggerated promise earlier. With the junior Marquis's promise, he can nearly do as he pleases within the Imperial City. Does the junior Marquis taking a stand in such a way show that the youth was really able to cure the senior Marquis's poison? After leaving the Divine Might Marquis Estate, Duan Ling Tian took a few detours before returning to his house. When he arrived, he removed the makeup on his face and recovered his handsome, sword-shaped eyebrows and starry-eyed appearance. I never thought that I'd gain such results in only just half a day. It was currently noon, and the corners of Duan Ling Tian's mouth curled into a satisfied smile as he smelled the scent of food coming from the kitchen. The 5 million silver was great, but the promise from the Divine Might Marquis Estate was absolutely priceless. After leaving the front courtyard, Duan Ling Tian passed the main building and walked into the rear courtyard. Compared to the front courtyard, the rear courtyard was much more spacious. Duan Ling Tian had only just walked in when he saw two figures that seemed like butterflies dancing in the wind, giving off a beautiful feast for the eyes. Duan Ling Tian walked into the pergola and greeted the woman that sat within. Mom. Tian, you're back. Li Ru's eyes flashed with a trace of doting as she lightly smiled. Her days went by in a very relaxed manner, no different from how it used to be when her husband was still present, and all of this was something that her son strived for. Unknowingly, her son who once made her worry her heart out had now grown to this extent. Now she had no other requests. Yes, Duan Ling Tian nodded. He sat with his mother and started to gaze at the two beautiful girls that were currently cultivating their martial skills in the distance. Tian, no matter what, you can't let them down, or else Mom won't forgive you. Li Ru abruptly said, with a tone filled with warning. Don't worry, Mom. Duan Lingtian shook his head and laughed bitterly. He felt that his mother was really too oversensitive. The two girls had practically become a part of his life that was difficult to give up. How could he ever let them down? Time flew by, and in the blink of an eye, nearly 2 months passed. Still slightly lacking, Duan Lingtian sat cross-legged on his bed as he slowly opened his eyes, and sighed. Ever since he returned from the Divine Might Marquis estate that day, he hadn't once stepped foot outside his home, and besides accompanying his mother and his 2 fiancées, he spent practically all his time cultivating. Although he progressed swiftly, up until now he was still a small step away from the 5th level of the core formation stage. Never mind, I'll let nature take its course. It's about time to report in at Paladin Academy. Duan Lingtian's brows knitted as he got up from his bed. Duan Lingtian didn't bring the 2 girls along when he went to Paladin Academy, only Shangquan and Little Black followed him as he swiftly left the house. The house Duan Lingtian bought was situated very close to Paladin Academy, and thus he arrived at Paladin Academy's main gate before long. Presently, Paladin Academy's main gate was extremely bustling. Some of the youths and the people beside them seemed worn out from their travels, as they obviously had only just made it to the Imperial City. If they were late by just a few more days, they would miss the allocated timeframe to report in, and then even if they had the qualifications to become a student, it would still be extremely difficult for them to step past Paladin Academy's main gate. I wonder if Xiao Yu has reported in yet. Duan Lingtian's brows knitted as he thought about Xiao Yu. He started following the stream of people to arrive before Paladin Academy's main gate and started to register himself. The person in charge of registration was a middle-aged man. He glanced at Duan Lingtian before saying, in a flat tone, proof of qualification. Duan Lingtian withdrew his proof of qualification and passed it to the middle-aged man. From the Iron Blood Army's genius camp. The middle-aged man glanced at the proof of qualification and was slightly surprised. Iron Blood Army's genius camp. Upon hearing the middle-aged man's voice, the pupils of the few youths standing behind Duan Lingtian constricted. I heard only 7 people passed the training and obtained the qualifications to enter Paladin Academy in the end during this year's Iron Blood Army's Genius Camp. I once heard that the Iron Blood Army's Genius Camp is famous within the 18 counties for being abnormal. Since this youth has displayed his talent and emerged from there, it would seem like he isn't any ordinary person. Even though I'm from Swallow Mountain County, I didn't dare enter the Iron Blood Army's Genius Camp because I might not have been able to survive. The discussions of the youths that entered his ears caused the corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth to unconsciously twitch. The Iron Blood Army's Genius Camp was so famous even in the other counties. Duan Lingtian. This name seems like someone of direct descent within the Duan clan. After comparing the proof of qualification with the information he had on hand, the middle-aged man thought this in his heart but didn't take further notice. In his opinion, if the youth was really a Duan clan disciple, since he had the ability to pass the Iron Blood Army's Genius Camp, the Duan clan would have long ago directly given him one of the positions of their recommendation quota and wouldn't make him risk his life. Entering the devilish training of the Iron Blood Army's Genius Camp was no different than risking one's life. Slap. The middle-aged man stamped a seal onto the proof of qualification before saying to Duan Lingtian, if you need to put up within the academy, then go in now and look for the teacher that is in charge of this to make arrangements. If you don't, then go home and take a look at this student's handbook. The term starts 5 days from now. Remember to bring your proof of qualification along. Duan Lingtian nodded and put away the proof of qualification before leaving with Shangquan. Put up in the academy. He didn't require it. Duan Lingtian's courtyard house was situated south of Paladin Academy. Presently, in a private courtyard house north of Paladin Academy, 2 young men sat together. One of them had a face full of unwillingness. Cousin brother, it's been 3 months. The people uncle sent out actually still haven't found that little bastard. Duan Rong had a face full of anger. As he recalled what happened 3 months ago, flames of fury couldn't help but be ignited within him. That violet-clothed youth shattered his carpal bone with a single finger attack that day, and even though his injuries had been healed, it still left behind some lingering effects. Currently, when he executed a martial skill, it was at least 20% weaker than before. It can't be helped, you provided too little detail. Violet-clothed youth, middle-aged man that wore a mask. In the Imperial City, where streams of people move about, similar people are everywhere. The other young man shook his head. Cousin brother, aren't you acquainted with the 5th prince? That store that sold the courtyard house is a business under the imperial family that our Duan clan is unable to intervene in, but if the fifth prince wanted to investigate, it shouldn't be too difficult, right? Duan Rong seemed to have thought of something as his eyes shone. The young man frowned before relaxing and saying, in a perfunctory manner, "Tell me again next time when I meet the fifth prince." He and the fifth prince had only met a few times, so they couldn't be considered as familiar. Even though he was the only son of the Duan clan's second master, he was nothing before the fifth prince. There were more than 10 princes within the Crimson Sky Kingdom, and besides a pavilion within the imperial palace, they each had a vast estate within the imperial city's inner city. Ordinarily, these princes usually stayed in their inner city estates. Fifth prince's estate. Cousin brother, it's been 3 months. Is there still not even a bit of news? Tong Li, who was wearing a full body of red clothing, pouted. She was extremely unhappy. Li, the people I sent have investigated for the past 3 months and have still come up empty-handed. You don't know his background, nor his name, so it's indeed difficult to investigate. Even to the extent that he might be someone who only came to the imperial city to sightsee and might have already left the imperial city. The fifth prince shook his head. His face always held a smile that made people feel like a spring breeze brushed by. It was an extremely comfortable feeling. Then what are we to do? Surely it doesn't mean that we'll just leave it as it is, right? Tong Li had a face full of unwillingness. Of course not. However, we don't have a way to find him, right? How about this? In the future, as soon as we have a clue about their whereabouts, cousin brother will surely take revenge for you, okay? The fifth prince then changed the subject. Li, Paladin Academy's term starts 5 days from now. General or Mastermind, have you decided which you're going to choose? Chapter 0145. General or Mastermind. Duan Lingtian was attracted by a set of words within the student handbook. It turned out that the students who entered Paladin Academy were required to choose between 2 departments. These 2 departments were respectively the Star General Department and the Star Mastermind Department. Someone who can gallop into the battlefield, is able to command 10,000 soldiers, possesses fearless courage, can easily take the head of the enemy general in the midst of a powerful army, and is full of spirit as he treads through corpses to taint the azure sky. That is the Star General. Someone who is hidden behind the scenes and possesses extraordinary wisdom. During peaceful times, he is able to govern the lands under him, whereas during times of war, he is able to map out a strategy and take control of everything, annihilating the enemy army with only the slightest effort. This is the Star Mastermind. Duan Lingtian shook his head and laughed. Paladin Academy deserved the title of being the Crimson Sky Kingdom's cradle for geniuses, because if one was able to graduate from Paladin Academy, then no matter where he goes, he will be an exceptional and formidable person. Choose 1 out of 2. Interesting. The corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth held a smile, and he'd already come to a decision within his heart. 5 days later, Duan Lingtian brought along Little Black as he left the house alone and walked towards Paladin Academy. According to the rules within the student handbook, students of Paladin Academy were disallowed from bringing an entourage into Academy grounds. In next to no time, Duan Lingtian arrived at Paladin Academy. At the main gate, an extremely grand sight of a long line of wagons could still be vaguely seen from one end of the street to the other. Many students were either sent over by their elders or by their entourage. However, in the end, only the student may enter Paladin Academy. There's actually so many female students. Duan Lingtian couldn't help but be surprised when he noticed quite a few female students producing their proofs of qualification and entering the academy. Looks like among the other counties, the tests for the qualification to either Paladin Academy are open to females, unlike the Iron Blood Army's Genius Camp. The Iron Blood Army's Genius Camp that Duan Lingtian attended didn't accept females, and if a female from the Swallow Mountain County were to desire to enter Paladin Academy, then they would have to travel to another county to take part in a similar test. Where should I go now? Duan Lingtian noticed that after he entered Paladin Academy, he had been aimlessly walking and couldn't find his way. Eventually, his sharp eyes caught a group of people going east, and he hurriedly followed them. On a vast field on the east side, some weapon racks were scattered about, as this place was obviously the Paladin Academy martial arts practice grounds. Duan Lingtian took a glance and noticed that there were many young men and young women that had already been waiting here for some time, and the ages of these people were all around 20 years old. Compared to them, Duan Lingtian was obviously much younger. Xiao Yu. Finally, Duan Lingtian noticed Xiao Yu within the crowd. Presently, Xiao Yu was chatting with another young man that stood beside him. Duan Lingtian walked over, and before long, Xiao Yu noticed him as well. He notified the young man beside him before walking over. Duan Lingtian, I've finally found you. Xiao Yu shook his head with a smile. I arrived at the Imperial City half a month ago, but I didn't where you were. How about you? What have you been doing for this past half month? Duan Lingtian asked with a light smile. I was at the Xiao clan estate, Xiao Yu said. Xiao family, Xiao clan. Xiao He. Duan Lingtian's expression stiffened. He recalled the genius alchemist, Xiao He, or in other words, a members of the Xiao clan. Could it be that Xiao Yu was related to the Xiao clan? Or maybe Aurora City's Xiao clan was related to the Imperial City's Xiao clan? The facts of the matter proved that Duan Lingtian's guess was correct. Yes, the Xiao clan. Our Aurora City Xiao family is precisely a branch family of the Imperial City's Xiao clan. I've already been specially admitted as a member of the Imperial City Xiao clan by the Patriarch after obtaining the qualification to study at Paladin Academy. Even though there was no change on Xiao Yu's face, his eyes obviously had a trace of excitement within them. Becoming a member of the Imperial City Xiao clan meant that he'd taken one more step forward, and in the future he would be able to use it as a stepping stone to leap up higher and further. Meanwhile, Xiao Yu realized that the young man beside him had been left out in the cold, so he hurriedly introduced him. Duan Lingtian, he's Xiao Xuan, a genius martial artist of the Imperial City Xiao clan, and my friend. Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian nodded to Xiao Xuan as he introduced himself. Xiao Xuan. Xiao Xuan replied with a smile, without a trace of that type of arrogance from a disciple of a large clan. Duan Lingtian, Xiao Xuan's elder brother, Xiao He, is the most gifted alchemist within our Xiao clan. 1 year ago, he became a grade 9 alchemist at the age of 20, Xiao Yu added. Xiao He. Duan Lingtian's face stiffened. Enemies were really bound to meet. He had only casually gotten to know a Xiao clan disciple and it was already Xiao He's younger brother. Xiao Xuan's pupils constricted as he slowly said, I used to think that my brother was a rare genius alchemist, but that changed 2 months ago when an 18-year-old grade 9 alchemist appeared in the Alchemist Guild's lobby. Only then did I realize that no matter how great a person is, there will always be someone greater. It's better this way, it can help lessen my brother's arrogance. I've heard of this as well. I heard that an 18-year-old alchemist even cheated your brother off 5 million silver, do you hate him? Duan Lingtian's eyes narrowed as he asked curiously. What is there to hate? I've heard of the sequence of events too. At the bottom of it all, the entire matter was my brother's wrong. If it wasn't for my brother being overbearing, the later events wouldn't have occurred. If I meet that genius alchemist, I might even thank him, as he caused my brother to undergo a change and become much more reserved than before. Xiao Xuan shook his head, seeming to not mind. Duan Lingtian glanced deeply at Xiao Xuan. Birds of a feather flocked together, and Xiao Yu's friend was indeed not like those usual profligate disciples of large clans. Duan Lingtian, Xiao Yu. Suddenly, a familiar voice sounded from afar. Duan Lingtian looked over to a red-clothed young man walking over shoulder to shoulder with a robust young man. The person who spoke was precisely the robust young man. The two people who were walking over, weren't they the two youths that passed the genius camp test with them and obtained the qualification to study at Paladin Academy, Su Li and Tian Hu? After a year's time, the two of them had obviously matured. Su Li was much more reserved. The original him had a pressing drive, but now it was completely restrained, and his cultivation had obviously progressed. Su Li, Tian Hu, Duan Lingtian and Xiao Yu greeted them with light smiles. Duan Lingtian, let's have a battle when we have the chance. Su Li looked at Duan Lingtian, and within his sharp gaze, battle intent flared. I'll be happy to accompany you. Duan Lingtian nodded with a smile. Duan Lingtian, you need to be careful, this fellow Su Li's already stepped into the 7th level of the core formation stage. What a fellow, when I met him a few days ago, he pulled me aside to battle and nearly finished me. Tian Hu seemed to have a slight lingering fear when he mentioned what happened a few days ago. 7th level of the core formation stage. Duan Lingtian pupils constricted and he was extremely shocked. It had only been a year and Su Li has already broken through from the 5th level to the 7th level of the core formation stage in one go. Xiao Yu and Xiao Xuan were shocked as well. 7th level of the core formation stage. Such a cultivation can be considered one of the top among this year's intake of new Paladin Academy students, Xiao Xuan praised, with a sigh. Yeah, there probably aren't many 7th level core formation martial artists within this year's new students. Xiao Yu deeply agreed. Su Li's gaze descended upon Duan Lingtian as he lightly said, I don't know about the others, but Duan Lingtian is surely at the 7th level of the core formation stage. So certain, Tianhu was slightly surprised. 1 year ago, he was already at the 6th level of the core formation stage. Su Li added, he still remembered the scene from 1 year ago when he challenged Duan Lingtian to a battle after the Genius Camp final test was concluded. At that time, he thought that since he had broken through to the 5th level of the core formation stage, it would be more than sufficient to battle Duan Lingtian. But unexpectedly, Duan Lingtian directly drew upon the energy of heaven and earth and condensed 8 ancient mammoths, silhouettes, causing him to instantly feel frustrated. Only Xiao Yu nodded without thinking it was unexpected when he heard what Su Li said. Tianhu and Xiao Xuan, on the other hand, looked at Duan Lingtian in surprise. Especially Xiao Xuan. He was secretly startled in his heart. This youth that has the same name as the Duan clan direct descendants and looks to be around 18 was already a 6th level core formation martial artist last year. Even the imperial family and the few great clans of the imperial city didn't have such a monster appear within their midst in the past few years. Such natural talent could already be compared to the student who entered Paladin Academy last year, Xu Qing. Xu Qing was an existence that was publicly acknowledged as Paladin Academy's genius student with the highest natural talent within the last 20 years. It's you. Suddenly, a figure walked over swiftly from afar. This voice emitted the conflicting combination of rage and joy. Duan Lingtian looked over when he heard the voice. The person that appeared before him was none other than Duan Lingxing's cousin, Duan Rong. Duan Rong walked over swiftly before staring at Duan Lingtian and saying, I've finally found you. I didn't think that you'd be a student at Paladin Academy as well. Now let's see where you can hide. Hide? Duan Lingtian smiled indifferently, and the corners of his mouth held a disdainful smile. You said I was hiding from you. As a person who lost to me, are you even worthy? Duan Rong's expression went grim as he shouted, in a low voice, long story short, you're a dead man. Trust me, I can grant you death right now. Duan Lingtian's gaze turned cold when he was threatened by Duan Rong. A terrifying killing intent swept out of his body to envelop Duan Rong when he took a step forward, causing Duan Rong's face to turn ghastly pale before fleeing in panic. Duan Lingtian, who's he? Why does it seem like he has great enmity and deep hatred for you? Xiao Yu asked. Just a profligate disciple. Duan Lingtian shrugged before speaking of the conflict between Duan Rong and himself. The nephew of the Duan clan's second master. Xiao Yu's pupils constricted. He had gained quite an understanding of the various clans within the imperial city during this past half-month's time, and thus was extremely clear as to the ability of the Duan clan's second master. Duan Lingtian, need any help? Su Li's gaze went cold as he looked at the faraway Duan Rong. The sword in his hand seemed to be ready to leave its sheath at any moment. It isn't necessary, it's only just a clown. Duan Lingtian shook his head and paid no attention to Duan Rong even though the one standing behind Duan Rong was the Duan clan's second master, Duan Rulei. If he was afraid, then he wouldn't have entered Paladin Academy with his real appearance when he already knew that Duan Rong was a student in Paladin Academy this year. If he were to come in disguise, it would be utterly impossible for Duan Rong to recognize him. Chapter 0146. Xiao Xuan's brows knitted, but similar to Duan Lingtian and Su Li, he paid no attention to Duan Rong, as Duan Rong was at most a branch family disciple of the Duan clan, and thus was far from being comparable to him in terms of status. I didn't think that there would be so many female students. Tianhu's gaze descended upon the bustling group of female students that were gathered on the other side of the vast martial arts practice grounds. As for the male students, they were gathered near Duan Lingtian's group. Do you guys know what we're gathered here for? Duan Lingtian asked. No, we followed the crowd over as well. Tianhu shook his head. He and Su Li were obviously similar to Duan Lingtian and had followed the others to arrive here. Xiao Xuan lightly smiled as he said, we're gathered here right now precisely for the reason of making it convenient for us to choose our departments. In a short moment, when nearly everyone has gathered, a teacher will come over. At that time, we'll be faced with an important choice in our life. The two departments within Paladin Academy treaded on two different paths. Moreover, the curriculums that Paladin Academy offered to the two departments were completely different as well. Talking about choosing departments, have you all decided your departments? Tianhu's eyes shone as he asked Duan Lingtian and the others. Xiao Yu lightly smiled as he said, Xiao Xuan and I chose the Star Mastermind department. Xiao Xuan nodded, and his eyes flashed with a luster of wisdom. Then you two are different from me. I decided to choose the Star General department. Tianhu grinned. We can tell. Duan Ling Tian sized up Tianhu with a glance before laughing. Really, you're not just making a smartass remark, right? Then tell me, what department did Su Li choose? Tianhu asked. Isn't it obvious? He'll naturally be choosing the Star General department like you, Duan Ling Tian said, in a matter-of-fact tone. Su Li was like a sharp sword with a pressing spirit. If such a person were on the battlefield, he would absolutely be a slaughtering machine and cause the enemy army to be terrified. Su Li, you're not really choosing the Star General department as well, right? Tianhu asked. What, got a problem? Su Li's gaze was like a sword as he stared at Tianhu. What problem would I have? I'm just slightly surprised, Tianhu laughed embarrassedly. If it was said that the him who had just arrived at the Iron Blood Army's genius camp that day was still able to compete with Su Li at that time, then the current him had already been left far behind by Su Li. Duan Ling Tian, how about you? You should probably be the same as Su Li and I and be choosing the Star General department, right? Tianhu asked, and followed by his question, the gazes of Su Li, Xiao Yu, and Xiao Xuan all descended upon Duan Ling Tian. Under the gazes of the four people, Duan Ling Tian's mouth only slowly spat out three words, Star Mastermind Department. Star Mastermind Department. They were all slightly surprised and felt that with Duan Ling Tian's strength, it would really be a waste if he entered the Star Mastermind Department. Duan Ling Tian only shook his head with a smile towards their surprised reaction. In his previous lifetime, Duan Ling Tian was a formidable weapons specialist, so what he specialized in was no different from what the Star General Department taught. Thus, in this lifetime, if he were to once again choose the Star General Department, it would be pointless. Therefore, he chose the Star Mastermind Department. The Paladin Academy teachers have arrived. Duan Ling Tian's sharp gaze noticed the two middle-aged men that were walking over swiftly from afar. At the same time, there were two young women that walked over to the group of female students. They were obviously teachers of Paladin Academy as well. Good day, everyone. I'm the teacher for the Paladin Academy's Star General Department, Niu Mang. Among the two middle-aged men, the robustly built bearded fellow's voice was like explosive thunder, causing the earbuds of the students near him to hurt. This Niu Mang's probably cultivated a martial skill similar to a lion's roar. Duan Ling Tian was slightly surprised. Among the offensive martial skills, there was an outlier subsection called sound martial skill. Generally, only a martial artist at or above the nascent soul stage would be capable of displaying the true might of a sound martial skill, and during actual combat, an unexpected attack using a sound martial skill would be able to induce a split-second daze on the opponent. Sometimes, during combat, a split-second daze was more than enough to decide the outcome. Good day, everyone. I'm the Star Mastermind Department's teacher, Sima Chongfeng. Compared to Niu Mang, the other middle-aged man was obviously more refined and extraordinary. He was dressed like a scholar, with a silk headdress and a feather fan in his hand, and had an extremely graceful bearing. Now, those students who chose the Star General Department, gather behind me. And those that chose the Star Mastermind Department, gather behind Teacher Sima. Niu Mang spoke once more and went straight to the point. Immediately, the group of male students started moving. See the three of you later. Tianhu greeted Duan Ling Tian's group of three and Su Li nodded to the three as well before the two of them left to gather behind Niu Mang. As for Duan Ling Tian's group of three, they glanced at each other before heading to gather behind Sima Chongfeng. So few people for the Star Mastermind Department. Duan Ling Tian glanced at the Star General Department gathering, then he looked around himself and was slightly surprised. The number of students entering Paladin Academy this year was 116. Among them, there were around 100 male students, and currently there were more than 80 males gathered for the Star General Department, whereas over at the Star Mastermind Department, there weren't even 20 people. Sima Chongfeng and Niu Mang were obviously not surprised by this result. Students that chose the Star Mastermind Department, follow me. Under the call of Sima Chongfeng, Duan Ling Tian's group of three and the other Star Mastermind Department students followed behind. As for the Star General Department students, they instead stayed on the spot. Even if you chose the Star Mastermind Department, you can't escape death. Duan Rong was amongst the group of Star General Department students, and his eyes stared off onto Duan Ling Tian's disappearing figure with a strong killing intent. Duan Lingtian and the group of new students were taken into a spacious classroom by Sima Chongfeng. Sit. Sima Chongfeng walked up the podium and faintly nodded to the 18 people that entered the classroom. Duan Lingtian sat down as well. Sima Chongfeng's gaze swept past the group of youths before slowly saying, "From today onwards, I'm the teacher for the Star Mastermind department for your year. I will teach you how to become a mastermind that's up to standards. Now, who among you can tell me what a mastermind is?" Sima Chongfeng's calm gaze abruptly turned to become filled with wisdom as he spoke. The instant Sima Chongfeng finished speaking, a student stood up and said, "A mastermind is someone who is hidden behind the scenes and possesses extraordinary wisdom. During peaceful times, he is able to govern the lands under him, whereas during times of war, he is able to map out a strategy and take control of everything, annihilating the enemy army with the smallest amount of effort." The gazes of all the students present, including Duan Lingtian's, fell onto the youth. Too shameless. Isn't this the introduction on the student handbook? That works. Many students were speechless. Sima Chongfeng pressed down his hands to signal for the students to sit back down before saying indifferently, "Exactly, just like the student handbook says. Possessing extraordinary wisdom and mapping out strategies is the core of the mastermind. In your coming days within the Star Mastermind department, what I will teach you all is precisely how to become a mastermind that's up to standards. You all must remember that a mastermind can allow the general to be undefeated but similarly is also able to make a general be annihilated. Sometimes, a single decision of the mastermind can decide the fate of the general." As he spoke up to this point, Sima Chongfeng's expression became serious. Duan Lingtian deeply agreed with what Sima Chongfeng said. If you think of the general as the limbs of a martial artist, which are used for executing martial skills and dodging attacks, then the mastermind would be the eyes of the martial artist, which are able to gain insight into everything. This is extremely important. Today, the first class I'll give you all is precisely on how to deal with one of the types of circumstances on the battlefield. Sima Chongfeng's gaze was filled with wisdom as he slowly asked, "If the enemy forces are stronger than mine, and the enemy knows of my situation, besides the most straightforward method of sneak attack, what strategy can be used to crumble the enemy forces?" "If the enemy forces are stronger than mine, and the enemy knows of my situation." Besides Duan Lingtian, whose eyes flashed and seemed to be confident, the remaining students muttered to themselves and unceasingly pondered. Sima Chongfeng's gaze descended onto Duan Lingtian before long. He had long since taken notice of this student, as a youth around the age of 18 stood out within a group of 20-year-old young men. Now that he noticed the youth's demeanor, his heart jerked. Could it be that he's thought of a strategy so quickly? After a short moment, Sima Chongfeng's gaze fell onto Duan Lingtian as he asked, "Looking at your appearance, it seems like you've reached a conclusion. Have you thought of a strategy?" For a moment, all of the students including Xiao Yu and Xiao Xuan looked at Duan Lingtian. "He can think of a way. It's a joke, right? He looks like a little kid, what way could he possibly have?" Some of the students glanced at Duan Lingtian disapprovingly. Duan Lingtian's brows knitted as he stood up and went straight to the point. "If I were to meet this type of situation, I would use the strategy of crossing the sea while deceiving the heavens, by intentionally and repeatedly using disguised methods to confuse and deceive the enemy, causing them to let their guard down before I abruptly attack to achieve victory. If someone from the nation of Hua from his previous lifetime were to be present, they would instantly react and realize that what Duan Lingtian spoke of now was precisely the first stratagem of the 36 stratagems, crossing the sea while deceiving the heavens." 1. Sima Chongfeng's pupils constricted. He actually never thought that this violet-clothed youth would be able to produce any good strategy, but the strategy that the violet-clothed youth spoke of now was in perfect harmony with his thoughts in some areas. This caused him to be unable to stop himself from being shocked, as this really only a 18-year-old youth. Crossing the sea while deceiving the heavens. Excellent, excellent. After hearing what Duan Lingtian said, Xiao Xuan carefully savored it for a moment. He was the first among the group of youths to react and couldn't help himself from praising Duan Lingtian. Some of the students who looked down on Duan Lingtian earlier were stunned. They had no choice but to admit that it was indeed an absolutely excellent strategy. After all, if anyone were to repeatedly be deceived, they would surely let down their guard. This was human nature. Good, what a good strategy, crossing the sea while deceiving the heavens. Sima Chongfeng laughed heartily before he looked at Duan Lingtian and asked, "What's your name?" 1 TL note, it's from a book called The 36 Stratagems. Less than mask your real goals by using the ruse of a fake goal until the real goal is achieved. Tactically, this is known as an open feint. In front of everyone, you point west when your goal is actually in the east. Greater than this is a description I copied from Wiki to save the time of anyone who doesn't feel the need to understand the book in depth, or alternatively you may Google it and there are plenty of websites that explain the entire book for usage in business. Chapter 0147. Duan Ling Tian. Duan Ling Tian nodded to Sima Chongfeng as he replied. Duan Ling Tian. Sima Chongfeng's brows knitted. He was slightly surprised. You're a Duan clan direct descendant. Besides Xiao Yu and Xiao Xuan, the other students that were somewhat acquainted with the imperial city's Duan clan looked at Duan Ling Tian as well, as the direct descendants of the Duan clan in this generation all had the name Ling. However, all of the students, including Sima Chongfeng, felt it to be slightly strange. If Duan Ling Tian was really a member of the Duan clan, he probably wasn't a nobody. Moreover, not mentioning how the strategy he spoke of earlier was more than enough to prove that he was intelligent and resourceful, just being able to enter Paladin Academy at the age of 18 was extremely rare as well. No, Duan Ling Tian shook his head. So what if the blood that flowed through his veins was the blood of a Duan clan direct descendant? That clan that was cold and detached was something he disdained. Sit down. Sima Chongfeng nodded. If Duan Ling Tian wasn't a Duan clan disciple, then he could understand why he'd never heard of him. The Crimson Sky Kingdom encompassed a vast area of land, and there were plenty of people surnamed Duan, so this was nothing strange. The other students heaved a sigh of relief. If he was a Duan clan disciple, his name would probably have spread through the imperial city long ago. However, even if he isn't a Duan clan disciple, being able to pass one of the tests within the 18 counties at such an age is indeed monstrous. Many students glanced at Duan Ling Tian with gazes that contained slight fear. This Duan Ling Tian, not only does he have great natural talent in the martial Dao, he has such an intelligent mind as well. The strategy of crossing the river while deceiving the heavens, to think he can think of such a strategy. As Xiao Xuan glanced at Duan Ling Tian, a feeling of admiration was aroused within him. Xiao Yu's gaze flickered, although he was surprised of the strategy that Duan Ling Tian spoke of. When he thought of all the repeated miracles that Duan Ling Tian created, he felt at ease. In his opinion, Duan Ling Tian was a little freak. Meanwhile, Sima Chongfeng's voice sounded. Duan Ling Tian's strategy of crossing the river while deceiving the heavens can be considered to be flawless. Even the plan I thought of contains some of the essence of the strategy of crossing the river while deceiving the heavens. Overall, my plan can't compare to his strategy of crossing the river while deceiving the heavens. Wah! Sima Chongfeng's voice had only just faded when the entire classroom burst into an uproar. Never had they imagined that the dignified Star Mastermind department teacher of Paladin Academy would actually show a bearing of being ashamed of his inferiority to a new student. However, with a few thoughts, they came to an understanding. The strategy that Duan Ling Tian spoke of was indeed worthy of admiration, it left no room for criticism. This teacher seems slightly interesting. Duan Ling Tian focused his gaze onto Sima Chongfeng and was slightly surprised. Ordinarily speaking, a teacher would place great importance on maintaining their pride and would absolutely not admit themselves to be inferior in any aspect to a student, but Sima Chongfeng, however, behaved in a frank and open manner and didn't feel even slightly ashamed. Such admirable demeanor. In next to no time, an entire morning's worth of time passed within Sima Chongfeng's lengthy lecture. Amazingly, Sima Chongfeng's lectures were considerably interesting and contained much interaction, so for the entire morning, there actually wasn't a single new student among the 18 of them that dozed off. The vastness of Sima Chongfeng's knowledge was something that even Duan Ling Tian couldn't help but admire. When it was nearly noon, Sima Chongfeng collected Duan Ling Tian and the other students' proof of qualification before handing out delicate, small badges that were the same on both sides. Besides having some patterns on the edges, the middle was engraved with 2 words, Paladin Academy. This is the Paladin Academy student badge. You can use this badge to travel in and out of Paladin Academy. As Sima Chongfeng spoke up to this point, his eyes, which were just filled with wisdom, abruptly became slightly fierce. However, if someone uses this badge and uses the name of a Paladin Academy student to bully the innocent and commit crimes in violation of the law, then Paladin Academy has the right to reclaim the badge and expel him from Paladin Academy. Sima Chongfeng's warning caused some of the students that planned on using this badge to show off later quickly dispelled the thoughts that had just arisen. They had all spent tremendous effort to enter Paladin Academy, and only they were clear of the hardships they faced. Now that they had become Paladin Academy students, they were the focus of attention and even brought honor to their families. If they were to be expelled from Paladin Academy, then it would really be an extreme loss of face. Paladin Academy is divided into 6 grades, and you're all grade 1 new students. Grade 1 new students have classes for 5 days and rest for 2. According to the school's rules, the students of the Star Mastermind department will have classes in the morning, have lunch in the Academy's cafeteria at noon, and have free personal activity time within the martial arts practice grounding in the afternoon, where they may discuss the martial Tao or spar with another, but it's disallowed to harm another's life. Sima Chongfeng left after finishing. Xiao Xuan stood up and said to Duan Lingtian and Xiao Yu, "Let's go have food." The 3 of them headed to the Academy's cafeteria, where they found an empty table and sat around it. The cafeteria in Paladin Academy was similar to the restaurants in the city. Before long, an attendant walked over and asked respectfully, "Young masters, what would you like to have?" The 3 of them ordered some dishes and a jug of wine. Teacher Sima's knowledge is really vast, and he is admirable, Xiao Yu said. Indeed, Duan Lingtian agreed with him. Xiao Xuan glanced at Duan Lingtian with a strange gaze. Duan Lingtian, Xiao Yu saying he admires Teacher Sima isn't strange to me, but you, who could think of a strategy that caused Teacher Sima to be ashamed of his inferiority, also admire Teacher Sima. The more he savored the strategy of crossing the river while deceiving the heavens that Duan Lingtian presented earlier in class, the more he felt it to be profound and difficult to be fully understood. This strategy was not something that could only be applied on the battlefield. It could also be used in a myriad of different places, and it was a very practical strategy. A trace of embarrassment appeared on the corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth as he heard what Xiao Xuan said, as the strategy of crossing the river while deceiving the heavens wasn't something that he thought about but rather was based on the 36 stratagems of his previous life. Now that Xiao Xuan said that it was he who thought of it, he couldn't help but feel ashamed. Before long, the students that arrived at the cafeteria grew in number. Among these students, some were 20-year-old new students, and there were also some that were over 20 years old and were higher grade students. In next to no time, the spacious cafeteria hall was filled with people, and some students could only stand aside and wait. Duan Lingtian, a familiar voice sounded from afar. It was Tianhu and Suli who had arrived. Even though the table wasn't too large, with a little squeeze, it could still fit the 5 of them. "Why are you all so late?" Duan Lingtian was slightly surprised. "Don't mention it. There are a lot of people in our Star General department, so it was further divided into 2 classes, and we were unlucky to be divided into Niu Mang's class. That Niu Mang is a freak. He only spoke briefly about the Tao of being a general in the classroom before dragging us off to the martial arts practice grounds to run, and we ran the entire morning. I'm dead tired." Tianhu cursed as he spoke. Meanwhile, Duan Lingtian noticed that the clothes on Tianhu's body were drenched in sweat. Xiao Yu glanced at Suli who seemed to be sitting there leisurely and teased, "Tianhu, it's you who can't handle it, right? Suli doesn't seem to be out of breath nor flushed. It doesn't seem to be as bad as you say. Can I compare to him? He's a free." Tianhu was just about to call Suli a freak when he noticed Suli's gaze, which was like sword, look over at him, and he hurriedly shut his mouth. "In other words, our Star Mastermind department is much more relaxed than yours. We enjoyed sitting in the classroom the entire morning." Xiao Xuan laughed. "If I knew earlier I would have chosen the Star Mastermind department," Tianhu said in slight regret. Suli grunted coldly and disdainfully said, "Are you even suited for that?" Duan Lingtian and the others started laughing. If Tianhu were to really become a mastermind that mapped out strategies, it would indeed be quite difficult on him. Before long, the steaming hot dishes arrived, and Duan Lingtian asked the attendant for 2 more pairs of chopsticks. The 5 of them had only just picked up their chopsticks and were about to eat. "Hey, you 5, put down the silver for this meal, and then you can leave." Just at this moment, an abrupt voice broke the peace at Duan Lingtian's table. Duan Lingtian's face sank as he looked over at the person who spoke. The person who spoke was a young man over the age of 20, and there were 3 more young men with similar ages behind him. Based on Duan Lingtian's guess, these 4 people should be grade 2 students. "There's nothing wrong with you, right?" Tianhu's eyes glared with his enormous eyes. He was not one bit fearful as he crossed eyes with the young man in the lead. "Kid, I asked you to leave your money and FK off. Didn't you hear me?" The young man in the lead's expression sank. Last year, when he was faced with the threats of a higher grade student, even though he, who was a new student at the time, felt like refusing to obey, he still obediently put down his money and left in the end. Now a new group of students had arrived at the academy, and he originally thought that he would be able to throw his weight as a higher grade student about, but who would have known that he actually encountered someone that would refuse to give in. Thus, he was slightly embarrassed. "We asked you to FK off, didn't you hear? Remember to put down the silver for this meal. Just take it as showing respect to us, and in the future we'll protect you in the academy." "What are you looking at? FK off." The other young men spoke out as they glared angrily at Duan Lingtian's group. Duan Lingtian, while looking at the surroundings, noticed that there were many new students that were faced with similar conditions. Most of the new students chose to swallow the insult and humiliation silently by leaving after putting down their silver and giving away the dishes and wine they'd chosen for themselves to the higher grade students. There are disgusting flies around everywhere these days, so annoying. Duan Lingtian shook his head and sighed before clamping some food and eating, completely ignoring the higher grade students. Upon hearing what Duan Lingtian said, Tianhu, whose rage was rising rapidly, was stunned for a moment and couldn't help but laugh. "Yeah, I didn't think that flies were so poor these days. They don't even have the money to eat. Tisk tisk, if you ask me, it doesn't matter if you don't have money. Just kneel down and sing a few tunes, maybe this young master will be pleased and will reward you with some spare change." After hearing what Duan Lingtian and Tianhu said, Xiao Yu and Xiao Xuan laughed loudly. They stopped paying attention to the 4 higher grade students that were staring furiously at them, they minded their own business and started to eat. As for Su Li, he was sweeping through the food on the table with a cold expression without any fluctuation in his emotions. You all," the young man in the lead's expressions was filled with anger and embarrassment, and the fury in his eyes soared. Chapter 0148. Good, very good, just you wait. Even though the young man in the lead was furious and wished for nothing more than to put down the 5 new students before him, he still didn't dare make a move within the cafeteria. This cafeteria was a business under the Vice Dean of Paladin Academy, and the group of attendants within the cafeteria were the Vice Dean's eyes and ears. Therefore, if he were to attack someone within this cafeteria, even if he was lucky enough to not die, he would still face dire punishment. Even to the extent that he might be expelled from Paladin Academy. In Paladin Academy, the dean almost never showed his face. Even among the grade 6 students, there weren't many who had seen the dean in the flesh, and most of the time it was the 2 vice deans that were in charge. The vice deans had absolute authority. The 4 higher grade students quickly left Duan Lingtian's table and walked over to a nearby table. After they made those students leave their money and scram, they directly sat down and started gulping down the food, while not forgetting to coldly gaze at Duan Lingtian's table every now and then, as if they were deeply afraid that Duan Lingtian's group would vanish before their eyes. Duan Lingtian's group of 5 paid no attention to them, they continued to eat and drink in extreme satisfaction. So full. After a while, Duan Lingtian ate his fill and burped with a satisfied smile. Xiao Yu and the others had eaten their fill as well. "Let's go take a stroll to digest our food." Duan Lingtian stood up and took the lead as the 5 of them slowly walked out of the cafeteria. As expected, the 4 higher grade students that had long since gobbled down their food followed Duan Lingtian's group and left the cafeteria, then they surrounded Duan Lingtian's group. Duan Lingtian wasn't surprised about being surrounded by them. The corners of his mouth held a smile. "Since you new students don't know the rules, as your seniors, we will properly teach you the rules today." The young man in the lead had a face that seemed to be covered in a layer of ice, emanating a pressing, cold aura. The other 3 young men looked fiercely at Duan Lingtian's group of 5 as well. Su Li grabbed his sheathed sword in his arms as his eyes stared at them. "FK off," he said, in a cold and indifferent voice that seemed to come out of a pit of ice. His tone shocked their senses. The 4 young men were stunned for a moment before bursting out with faces filled with rage. They were grade 2 students, but now they were actually being trampled on by a grade 1 student. If news of this were to spread, how would they stand their ground at Paladin Academy in the future? "Kid, you're courting death." The face of the young man near Su Li sank, then he burst out with rage and his body flashed towards Su Li. Above him, 8 ancient mammoth silhouettes condensed into form. 6th level of the core formation stage. Duan Lingtian shook his head, as he knew that misfortune was about to befall this higher grade student. Bang! The young man slapped out his palm as his origin energy condensed. He seemed to form a layer of origin energy flames on his palm that emitted a burning aura, and it moved to envelop Su Li. How Ji's profound flame palm is worthy of being a high-grade profound rank martial skill at the perfection stage. His origin energy has almost really condensed into flames. Humph. This grade 1 student dares to be arrogant and act cool in front of us. He's courting death. The other two young men that surrounded Duan Lingtian's group sneered. However, in the next moment, the smiles on their faces completely froze. Whoosh. They weren't even able to see how Su Li moved. A strand of sword light whistled out before instantly returning to its sheath with a clang. At this exact instant, the young man that executed his profound flame palm towards Su Li abruptly emitted a miserable, shrill cry. Kai. A strand of fresh blood violently shot out of his wrist, and the origin energy on his feeble palm dissipated. Then the young man's body moved forward due to momentum before crashing on the ground in a sorry state. The other three young men unconsciously retreated a step back. They had extremely unsightly expressions. 10. The strength of 10 ancient mammoths. 7th level of the core formation stage. A trace of terror appeared in their eyes as they gazed at the 10 ancient mammoth silhouettes that were slowly dissipating above the young man with a cold expression. At this moment, they felt like they had really stepped on *T luck. The amount of grade 1 new students that were at the 7th level of the origin core stage could be counted on hand. However, one was precisely encountered by them. Although they were grade 2 students, during their year, they were at the bottom of their batch of students. Even after being at Paladin Academy for a year, they had been stuck at the 6th level of the core formation stage due to the bottleneck, and they were still unable to break through to the 7th level of the core formation stage. Some of the students that followed them out of the cafeteria to watch show, no matter whether they were new students or old students, they were all dumbstruck. 7th level of the core formation stage. And he's even a new student. Their gazes descended one by one onto the cold figure that held a sheathed sword within his arms. Su Li's sword skill is even faster than before. Duan Lingtian was slightly surprised. The speed at which Su Li's sword attacked earlier was completely on par with his sword-drawing arts, and when executed with a cultivation at the 7th level of the core formation stage, it moved like thunder and was swift like lightning. Besides Tianhu, who didn't feel it was one bit unexpected, Xiao Yu and Xiao Xuan's pupils constricted and their faces were full of surprise, as they obviously didn't expect Su Li to be so formidable. Based on Su Li's sword strike before, Su Li's strength could be considered outstanding even among most 7th level core formation martial artists. Hee, didn't the three of you want to teach us about rules? What are you retreating so far away for? What, afraid? Tianhu laughed complacently as he looked at the three young men that were retreating. The three young men had expressions as unsightly as they could possibly be. They lowered their heads in shame and supported the injured young man up before leaving gloomily. Tianhu looked at Su Li after withdrawing his complacent gaze and said, while shaking his head, Su Li, you let them off too easily. I originally thought that you would cut off his hand. I didn't think that you would only give him a flesh injury. This isn't like you. HMPH. Su Li grunted coldly before coolly walking forward. He paid no attention to Tianhu. Duan Lingtian shook his head and laughed. Tianhu, is the wrist tendon being severed only a flesh injury to you? He clearly saw the sword strike that Su Li executed earlier. That young man's hand could be considered to be utterly crippled. Wrist tendon severed. Tianhu was stunned on the spot. Xiao Yu and Xiao Xuan were so shocked that their pupils constricted. To a martial artist, the wrist tendons being severed was no different than their arm being severed. Su Li stopped dead in his tracks and looked back to glance at Duan Lingtian with a gaze filled with soaring battle intent. He didn't think that Duan Lingtian would actually be able to clearly see his sword strike. As expected, it was just as he had thought. Duan Lingtian's strength had improved once again. Duan Lingtian's group walked off swiftly, leaving behind a group of new and old students alike who gazed at each other with eyes that were filled with traces of fear. I never thought that there would be such a formidable person among this year's new students. Remember that person properly, we mustn't offend him. They all had a slight lingering fear. Just at this moment, a red-clothed girl with eyes that had a trace of peerless arrogance walked out of the cafeteria. What are you all doing here? She asked the students outside the cafeteria, in a condescending manner and on her high horse. Every student that was able to enter Paladin Academy was a person who was proud and arrogant, so virtually no one paid attention to the red-clothed girl. The red-clothed girl's expression instantly sank. Hey, Big Sister Lee asked you all something. Are you all mute? Do you all know what Big Sister Lee's identity is? Behind the red-clothed girl, a brown-clothed girl glared at the surrounding students. Let me tell you all, Big Sister Li is Imperial concubine Ling's niece, the cousin sister of 5th Prince. 5th Prince's cousin sister. The male students present shuddered and their eyes shone. When they gazed once more at the red-clothed girl, their faces were full of flattery. All of them seemed to have become a completely different people. So it's Miss Li. I once heard of Miss Li's drop-dead gorgeous appearance. Seeing you today, your reputation is truly well-deserved. A male student with a wretched appearance flattered. Yeah, Miss Li's a born beauty, truly an unrivaled beauty. I finally know after seeing Miss Li today that the people of ancient times did not lie. A beauty beautiful enough to cause flowers to blush and the moon to hide and causes fish to sink and birds to alight, such an appearance really exists. Every one of the students that paid no attention to Tong Li earlier now seemed as if they were bulls on aphrodisiac and were extremely excited, as they all wanted to use Tong Li as a means to get a chance to flatter the 5th Prince and join his entourage to seek riches. Tong Li's gloomy face slightly eased up as she grunted coldly, "This miss asked you all what you were all doing here. And that puddle of blood, it should have been left there recently. What happened here?" Instantly the surrounding male students tried to get a word in as they explained the sequence of events. New student, 7th level of the core formation stage. Tong Li's pupils constricted as they flashed with a trace of an odd light. In truth, it was practically impossible for her to pass any of the 18 counties tests and enter Paladin Academy with her natural talent. The only reason she could enter Paladin Academy was by relying on the relationship she had with the Imperial family to obtain a place in the recommendation quota. But the actual objective she had for coming to Paladin Academy was precisely to find a formidable groom, as she thought extremely highly of herself and swore that she would find an unparalleled and peerless man. Now that she had heard of that sword-wielding young man, even though she didn't see it with her own 2 eyes, it still aroused a trace of interest in her, an interest to want to get to know the young man. However, at this moment, the Su Li that Tong Li wanted to get to know had arrived with Duan Lingtian and the others at a bamboo forest behind Paladin Academy. This time, when faced with Su Li's challenge, Duan Lingtian accepted. He didn't reveal his full strength to make Su Li aware of the difficulty and retreat. Instead, he decided to limit his strength to a strength comparable to Su Li's. Su Li's sword skill aroused his battle intent as well. In the quiet and secluded bamboo forest, Xiao Yu, Xiao Xuan, and Tian Hu stood at a side and acted as spectators. Duan Lingtian and Su Li stood facing each other. Duan Lingtian focused his gaze on Su Li. At this moment, Su Li seemed like a swift sword in his eyes, a swift sword that would whistle out at any moment. Compared to a year ago, not only did Su Li's cultivation increase swiftly, even his martial skills stages had improved. Duan Lingtian, watch out, Su Li said in a low voice, and in the next moment his entire body moved as if it had transformed into a swift sword. It flew out and flashed towards Duan Lingtian. 10 ancient mammoth silhouettes dashed out in tow. Bring it on. Duan Lingtian's gaze focused as he moved out. Spirit serpent movement technique. Duan Lingtian's figure jerked as he exerted the strength of 10 ancient mammoths. His entire body seemed to transform into an agile serpent as he moved to intercept Su Li. In terms of speed, both of them were executing high-grade profound rank movement techniques at the perfection stage, and were thus comparable. Xiao Xuan had astonishment within his gaze because although he had heard that this Duan Lingtian's strength was extraordinary, when he really saw it, it was a totally different feeling. Chapter 0149. Whoosh, whoosh. Accompanied by 2 extremely swift figures that crossed paths each other, 2 sword howls echoed out at practically the same time. And at almost the exact same time. Clang, 2 extremely swift swords collided together before splitting apart abruptly. Duan Lingtian and Su Li exchanged positions before once again facing each other. Their first engagement was actually a tie. Seeing this scene caused Tian Hu to mutter, 2 freaks. Even Xiao Yu and Xiao Xuan were moved. Xiao Yu didn't know that Duan Lingtian's was already this strong. Xiao Xuan was even more surprised. He could almost completely be certain that among their Xiao clan's younger generation, there was absolutely no 7th level core formation martial artist that was a match for the 2 that were currently locked in combat. Their swords were just too swift. All he could see was a violet sword light and a red sword light flashing by followed by a clang sound, and nothing more after that. Duan Lingtian gazed fixedly at Su Li as he asked, Su Li, since your sword is a spirit weapon, why don't you use the amplification of it? Didn't you not use it as well? Su Li asked rhetorically. Duan Lingtian's gaze focused as he slowly said, I want to experience you at your strongest. I understand. Su Li nodded, then his legs jerked and his entire body was suffused with origin energy. He seemed to once again transform into a swift sword as he whistled out, kicking up dust all over the air. A strand of red sword light moved like a shadow, flashing straight towards Duan Lingtian's chest. In the blink of the eye, 11 ancient mammoth silhouettes condensed into form above Su Li. The extra ancient mammoth was precisely the amplification from the grade 9 spirit weapon in Su Li's hand. Spirit serpent movement technique. Duan Lingtian focused his gaze as he flashed out. The strength of 10 ancient mammoths exploded forth as he instantly went to intercept Su Li, and his flexible and agile body seemed like a spirit serpent. At the moment he intercepted Su Li, an extra ancient mammoth silhouette appeared out of thin air above Duan Lingtian. 11 ancient mammoth silhouettes dashed out in tow. Clang! Their swords collided. Bang! At this exact instant, Su Li's other hand slapped out with a palm that was coiled in raging origin energy, descending onto Duan Lingtian's body. It was actually another high-grade profound rank martial skill at the perfection stage. Greater teleportation. Duan Lingtian hurriedly circulated his defensive martial skill. He didn't expect Su Li to have cultivated another martial skill that had extraordinary might. Su Li's palm strike descended onto Duan Lingtian's defensive chi barrier. Duan Lingtian's defensive chi barrier shook, whereas Su Li's oncoming palm lightly trembled. The might of his attack was instantly reflected back to him by Duan Lingtian's greater teleportation. Meanwhile, Duan Lingtian's defensive chi barrier shattered with a crash. Whoosh! And at this exact instant, Duan Lingtian's other arm abruptly swung straight out like a raging python swinging its tail. Bang! Su Li's internal organs were already shaken by the counter-force from Duan Lingtian's greater teleportation, and now that the sword in his right hand was stopped by Duan Lingtian, he had no way of dodging Duan Lingtian's arm that swept towards him, so he was blasted away. Luckily, Duan Lingtian was able to withdraw his force in time, and thus prevented him from being heavily injured. Su Li's figure flew out, and when he finally stabilized himself with great difficulty, all he felt was the lifeblood within him roiling. He didn't dare to hesitate to hurriedly withdraw a grade 9 gold injury pill and consume it. Only after doing so did he recover slightly. Duan Lingtian won. Tian Hu was dumbstruck. Earlier, he originally thought that Duan Lingtian would at most battle to a draw with Su Li, and when he saw Su Li's palm slapping towards Duan Lingtian, he thought that Duan Lingtian was about to lose. Never had he imagined that Su Li had always been concealing his strength, and besides his sword skill, he'd cultivated another shocking martial skill. But what occurred in the next instant caused his heart to be like a wagon passing a mountain road, continuously rising and falling. Duan Lingtian executed his defensive martial skill to stop Su Li's palm strike, then he followed it up with a swing of his arm that blasted Su Li flying. When he saw Su Li's current expression, he understood that Su Li had lost. Xiao Yu and Xiao Xuan glanced at each other and both saw a sense of fear within each other's eyes. Duan Lingtian's strength is actually so formidable. Xiao Xuan sighed in admiration. I didn't expect it either. It's only been a year since I last saw him, but his strength has increased so much. Xiao Yu's gaze was complicated, as it could be said that he watched as Duan Lingtian grew step by step. From the first time Duan Lingtian stood out during the Genius Gathering and defeated him to become the top ranked on the Hidden Dragon list to when he was full of heroic spirit during the Genius Camp. Duan Lingtian repeatedly created miracles and caused him to be practically numb to them. Unknowingly, the youth that once had a strength merely a strand above his was now far beyond his reach. Duan Lingtian, I didn't think that I'd still be inferior to you after a year. Su Li lightly sighed but didn't become dejected, and the battle intent within his eyes didn't lessen one bit. However, I will make you my target, I will defeat you one day. I'll be waiting to see. Duan Lingtian lightly nodded. Su Li was the martial artist with the most indomitable and firm disposition he'd seen in his lifetime. He did not discourage by failure and would get more valiant as he battled. Of course, there were many similar figures within the memories of Rebirth Martial Emperor, and all of those figures carved out a place for themselves in this world. They were all great figures whose names were known across the lands. Duan Lingtian was confident that as long as Su Li's indomitable and firm heart towards the martial Tao didn't perish, he would surely be able to become a powerhouse whose name is known across the lands in the future. After putting away his violet myrtle flexible sword, Duan Lingtian looked at Su Li and Tian Hu as he asked, "What's the plan for your Star General Department in the afternoon?" Tian Hu slowly said, "Niu Meng said to be at the classroom on time. As for anything besides that, I don't know for now." How about you all? We have free personal activity time at the martial arts practice grounds in the afternoon, and once time's up we can leave the academy. Xiao Yu laughed. Your star mastermind department is so nice. Tian Hu had a face full of envy, but unfortunately he wasn't made for that. Duan Ling Tian's brows knitted. It's about time now, let's go. After walking out of the bamboo forest, Duan Ling Tian, Xiao Yu, and Xiao Xuan walked towards the martial arts practice grounds. As for Su Li and Tian Hu, they instead walked towards the Star General Department classroom. On arrival at the martial arts practice grounds, Duan Ling Tian noticed that there weren't many people present. Besides their grade 1 Star Mastermind Department students, there seemed to only be the Star Mastermind Department students of the other grades. For an entire afternoon, Xiao Yu and Xiao Xuan discussed the martial Dao and sparred with other people. Duan Ling Tian lied atop a large tree outside the martial arts practice grounds and slept soundly. At the moment he woke up, he noticed that most of the people in the martial arts practice grounds had already left. Duan Ling Tian, you really are so carefree, sleeping the entire afternoon. Let's go have a drink. Unknowingly, Xiao Yu had arrived under the tree and raised his head to look at Duan Ling Tian. Another day. I've been out all day today, so my family is probably worried. Duan Ling Tian refused Xiao Yu's invitation. Before he came today, he wasn't aware that Paladin Academy students weren't allowed to leave the academy at noon and had to stay within the academy to have lunch. Thus, the young and old beauties at home would surely be extremely worried. Okay, Xiao Yu didn't insist. He left Paladin Academy with Xiao Xuan to return to the Xiao clan estate. Duan Ling Tian returned to his own courtyard house, and as expected, it was just as he had thought. The three women at home were extremely worried about him, and they started asking all sorts of questions the moment he entered the house. Only after he explained the reason did the three women heave a sigh of relief. That night, after dinner, Duan Ling Tian continued to cultivate the Nine Dragons War Sovereign technique. He kept having the feeling that he would break through soon, but it seemed like he lacked a certain critical element. Never mind, I'll take it slowly. There's no rush, maybe it's because of psychological reasons. After falling asleep, at dawn the next day, Duan Ling Tian, who was cultivating as usual, didn't feel the resistance of breaking through within his heart, and just at this moment, a scene that made Duan Ling Tian joyous appeared. Bang! His origin energy charged through the bottleneck as if being helped by the gods. Instantly, his cultivation broke through to the 5th level of the core formation stage. Is it possible to do it like this? Needless to say, this was an extremely pleasant surprise to Duan Ling Tian. At the same time, Duan Ling Tian could feel that a change occurred in his spiritual force as a consequence of the breakthrough, and now when he sensed the objects in his surroundings, they seemed to be much clearer. Is this the spiritual force of a nascent soul martial artist? Duan Ling Tian gaze abruptly shone. Young master, it's time for breakfast. K-er's voice sounded from outside the room. K-er, you all eat first, I'll come out once I get dressed. While Duan Ling Tian got dressed, the memories of Rebirth Martial Emperor unceasingly flashed within his mind. What he wanted to do now was choose an inscription from the boundless memories of Rebirth Martial Emperor, an inscription that could be inscribed with the spiritual force of a nascent soul martial artist. There were many inscriptions at this level, but offensive inscriptions accounted for most of them. As for the other inscriptions, Duan Ling Tian didn't study them, as the silver he had was at most enough to buy materials to inscribe 3 inscriptions that were sufficient to annihilate nascent soul martial artists. He wouldn't waste his silver on other inscriptions. Only offensive inscriptions fundamental to preserving one's life. After getting dressed, Duan Ling Tian arrived at the rear courtyard. Normally, he, his mother, and the 2 girls would have their meals here. As the owner of the courtyard house, Duan Ling Tian personally created a rule stating that besides his family members, only Shang Quan and Jing Ru were allowed within the rear courtyard. Li Ru noticed Duan Ling Tian's glowing face and curiously asked, "Tian, what are you so happy about?" "Mom, it's nothing, it's only a breakthrough in my cultivation," Duan Ling Tian casually said. What he cared about wasn't the breakthrough of his cultivation, but the breakthrough of his spiritual force. The breakthrough of his cultivation would only be able to provide him an extra strength of 1 ancient mammoth, and this was nothing much. But the breakthrough of his spiritual force, on the other hand, was sufficient for him to inscribe inscriptions that were able to annihilate nascent soul martial artists. "Scoundrel, I heard Shang Quan say that there's a piece of news that's been spread around the entire inner city and gave rise to much discussion. The news said that 2 months ago, an 18-year-old grade 9 alchemist appeared in the Alchemist Guild. It was you, right? Li Fei looked at Duan Lingtian with a spurious smile. She still remembered that Duan Lingtian once left the house in disguise 2 months ago. And that matter in the Alchemist Guild seemed to have occurred on that day. Since you've already guessed it, why ask? Duan Lingtian rolled his eyes at Li Fei, then his gaze moved downward to descend upon Li Fei's pair of plump jade hills, and his lower region burned as it reacted. In fact, it had been quite some time since he's doted on this little girl. When Li Fei noticed Duan Lingtian's gaze, her peerlessly beautiful face flushed and she glared at Duan Lingtian. Chapter 0150. After taking in a deep breath, Duan Lingtian suppressed the lust that arose within his heart and left the rear courtyard after his meal. Shang Quan. After finding Shang Quan in the front courtyard, Duan Lingtian withdrew a brush and with a wave of the hand, started writing down a long and dense list of materials. Gather these materials for me as soon as possible. This is 10 million silver, take it. At the same time that he passed over the list full of materials to Shang Quan, Duan Lingtian withdrew all the silver within his spatial ring, a total of 10 million silver, and passed it over to Shang Quan. Yes, young master, Shang Quan respectfully replied, then he left the house right after Duan Lingtian left for Paladin Academy. When Duan Lingtian arrived at the Star Mastermind Department classroom, he noticed that both Xiao Yu and Xiao Xuan were already there. You two are really early. Because class hadn't started yet, the three gathered together and whispered to one another in idle chat. Duan Lingtian's eyes focused as he asked Xiao Xuan, right, Xiao Xuan, you're a disciple of the Xiao clan. Do you know what cultivation level the so-called Void Stage powerhouses within the Crimson Sky Kingdom are at? According to my knowledge, some Void Stage powerhouses aren't truly in the Void Stage but are only half a step into the Void Stage, and their cultivation is still at the 9th level of the Nascent Soul Stage. Xiao Xuan shook his head and smiled. Others might not know of the answer to your question, but I, however, do know. In truth, the Void Stage powerhouses that are spread thinly within the Crimson Sky Kingdom are largely different compared to the Void Stage powerhouses from the rumors, who are able to control the air and fly. The 18 county governors under the Crimson Sky Kingdom, the guard commanders of the 3 great trading companies in each county, and our Xiao clan's Void Stage powerhouse, they are all only peak 9th level nascent soul martial artists, or in other words, the half a step into the Void Stage that you spoke of. They at most are able to stay in the air for a short period and are unable to truly control the air and fly, Xiao Xuan slowly said. Duan Lingtian nodded. As expected, it was just as he had thought. Divine Might Marquis Niyuan was also this type of existence. There should be some true Void Stage powerhouses that can control the air and fly within the Crimson Sky Kingdom, right? Duan Lingtian thought of the old man, the senior Marquis of the Divine Might Marquis estate straight away. Although the old man was infected with the Dark Nether Minx poison and all of his origin energy was suppressed, he was a true Void Stage powerhouse, an existence at the Void Prying stage. Of course there are. Xiao Xuan nodded, and his eyes emitted a sense of reverence. According to rumors, there are 3 true Void Stage powerhouses within our Crimson Sky Kingdom, one within the Imperial family, one within the Divine Might Marquis estate, and the last one is within the Ghastly Shadow. Ghastly Shadow? Duan Lingtian was slightly surprised. He didn't think it was strange that the Imperial family had a true Void Stage powerhouse. After all, that's an existence that stands at the apex of Crimson Sky Kingdom. But that Ghastly Shadow was a mere assassin's organization, and it actually had a true Void Stage powerhouse commanding it as well. After Xiao Xuan finished explaining, he added, right, it's fine that you two know, but try not to tell anyone. This is the secret suffering of our Crimson Sky Kingdom, and if it wasn't for me annoying my grandfather, he wouldn't have told me. Duan Lingtian and Xiao Yu nodded in understanding. How many people would know that the Void Stage powerhouses that are spread about outside are practically all half-step Void Stage martial artists, and not true Void Stage powerhouses? Xiao Xuan lightly sighed. During the following conversation, Duan Lingtian gained an understanding of the distribution of powers within the Crimson Sky Kingdom. Within the Crimson Sky Kingdom, the power that stood at the apex was undoubtedly the Imperial family. The Void Stage powerhouse within the Imperial family was allegedly the strongest existence within the Crimson Sky Kingdom. Even the Ghastly Shadows and Divine Might Marquis estate's Void Stage powerhouses were slightly inferior to him. And thus, the 2 powers merely inferior to the Imperial family were the Ghastly Shadow and the Divine Might Marquis estate, as they each had a true Void Stage powerhouse in command. The 6 great powers that followed after those 3 were the 3 great clans of the imperial city, the Duan clan, the Shao clan, and the Su clan, as well as the 3 great trading companies, which included the Violet Tulip Trading Company. There were many half-step void stage powerhouses within these 6 powers. After these 6 great powers were the 18 county governor estates under the Crimson Sky Kingdom, as they each had a half-step void stage powerhouse. The Divine Might Marquis Estate. The current Divine Might Marquis Estate is probably inferior to the 3 great clans and 3 great trading companies. Duan Lingtian sighed in his heart. He understood that the glory of the Divine Might Marquis Estate stemmed from the Senior Marquis, and the only reason the Divine Might Marquis Estate was still influential now was because the Senior Marquis was still alive. Even though the Senior Marquis was infected with the poison of the Dark Nether Mink, there was still no one who dared to look down on the Divine Might Marquis Estate. It was like a tiger, even sickly, it was still a tiger, and was far from something a cat or dog could compare to. Of course, if the Senior Marquis were to pass away one day, then the Divine Might Marquis Estate would surely go into a decline, unless another true void stage powerhouse were to appear within the Divine Might Marquis Estate. At some point, the students had all gathered within the class and teacher Sima had arrived. However, during the entire morning, although Duan Lingtian was in the classroom, his mind had long ago flown far away. He was constantly thinking about the matter of Shangquan gathering the materials and was wondering how Shangquan's progress was. I'm now capable of inscribing an inscription that's sufficient to annihilate a nascent soul martial artist. However, I'm 90% certain that it wouldn't pose a threat to a half-step void stage martial artist. There are only a few types of inscriptions that are sufficient to annihilate a half-step void stage powerhouse. However, each of those inscriptions require extremely valuable materials that are difficult to obtain and gather within the Crimson Sky Kingdom. Duan Lingtian's train of thought floated as he lightly pondered. Never mind, why am I thinking so much? Could it be that the 5th prince and the Duan clan's 2nd master are capable of ordering a half-step void stage martial artist to deal with me? Duan Lingtian laughed in self-ridicule as he thought of this. Although there was quite a number of half-step void stage martial artists within the imperial family and the Duan clan, they weren't existences that anyone could order around, not to mention be sent to deal with a youth. Overall, today's gains were not bad. At least he gained an understanding of the various powers within the Crimson Sky Kingdom. As the saying goes, know the enemy and know yourself, and you can fight 100 battles with no danger of defeat. At noon, Duan Lingtian and the others gathered together for lunch. HMPH. Suddenly, among the young men that walked in the cafeteria, the gaze of one of them was incomparably icy cold as it descended upon Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian, this Duan Rong seems like he won't let the matter go. You should be careful. Xiao Yu recognized the person as he frowned with a slightly serious expression. Don't worry, it's just a clown, Duan Lingtian said indifferently. It's better to be careful. That Duan clan's 2nd master's wife is famous for being extremely cruel and merciless. There was once a servant girl who called her a fat woman in private and was overheard by her. Guess what happened? Xiao Shuan kept them guessing as he spoke to this point. Killed by her. Tian Hu guessed. No, Xiao Shuan shook his head. Okay, stop creating suspense and tell us. What happened in the end? Xiao Yu derided. Xiao Shuan's eyes emitted a trace of being unable to bear the thought of what he was about to say. In the end, she ordered people to fill that servant girl's stomach with water. They continuously filled it for a whole day and night, and finally, that servant girl's stomach exploded open. Supposedly, her intestines flowed all over the floor. FK, don't talk about this while we eat. Tian Hu's face was filled with disgust. Duan Lingtian's eyes went cold. The Duan clan's 2nd master's wife, or in other words, the mother of Duan Lingxing. As expected, they were cut from the same cloth. The entire family was so cruel and merciless. Miss Li, he's the one that cut the wrist tendon of the grade 2 student yesterday. Suddenly, a voice full of flattery sounded from afar, then a young man with a wretched appearance arrived before Duan Lingtian's table and extended his finger to point at Su Li. Su Li's gaze turned cold as he said, with a chilly voice, "Scram. Don't misunderstand, I don't have any ill intentions. It's just that Miss Li wants to get to know you." The young man with a wretched face was so scared that his face went pale, as he saw with his own 2 eyes of Su Li's ability and didn't consider himself Su Li's match. Su Li frowned and then looked towards the area behind the young man with the wretched appearance. A red-clothed girl was walking over while being followed by another girl. It's her. Duan Lingtian's gaze focused as he saw the red-clothed girl. The person that appeared before him now was none other than the girl who was taught a lesson by him at the restaurant in the outer city that day, the fair Sun County's county governor's daughter who was also the cousin sister of the Crimson Sky Kingdom's imperial family's fifth prince. Enemies really are fated to meet, Duan Lingtian thought in his heart. However, Duan Lingtian also noticed that due to the angle, the girl didn't notice him. Moreover, there seemed to only be Su Li within her gaze. Nice to meet you, I'm Tong Li. Tong Li actually put away her usual arrogant expression in front of Su Li and her face emitted a trace of a faint smile. Su Li indifferently nodded to Tong Li. The corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth twitched as he saw this. It can't be, this girl is actually interested in Su Li. It's too preposterous. Meanwhile, Xiao Yu, Xiao Xuan, and Tian Hu all glanced at Su Li with dubious gazes, as they had all noticed the clues. Su Li only glanced at Tong Li before withdrawing his gaze and saying indifferently, "If there's nothing else, don't disturb our meal." Tong Li's pupils constricted, and a trace of fury emerged on her face. Going to flare again, the corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth curled into a sneer. As expected, people don't easily change. Su Li, what do you mean by this? This misgreeted you, and it's your honor. You don't not know what's good for you. Tong Li fiercely shouted. She completely flared and returned to her original self. As far as she was concerned, her humbling herself to greet Su Li was already giving Su Li enough face, but Su Li's attitude caused her to be unable to bear it. Her attitude just now, which would seem normal in front of a bystander, was, in her eyes, considered to be humbling herself. Xiao Yu, Xiao Xuan, and Tian Hu were all stunned. The current Tong Li was like a completely different person than the earlier Tong Li. It was known that women are capricious, but this change seems a little too exaggerated, right? Su Li's face sank and his gaze went slightly cold as he shouted, in a low voice, "Scram! You dare tell me to scram?" Tong Li's expression went grim. Besides that violet-clothed youth who didn't know what was good for him from before, there actually was another that dared shout at her. He was courting death. Chapter 0151. Tisk tisk, Miss Tong, do you want to use your whip to teach Su Li a lesson now? Duan Lingtian's eyes narrowed as he gazed at Tong Li with a spurious smile. The voice that entered her ears caused Tong Li to feel like she was waking up from a dream, and when she slightly turned her head to look, only then did she realize that the person at the same table with Su Li was precisely the violet-clothed youth that slapped her tens of times at the restaurant 3 months ago. Instantly, her face went ghastly pale. You are. She never thought that she would encounter that violet-clothed youth here. In her eyes, this youth was a devil. Maybe at ordinary times, she would wish nothing more than to kill the youth and be relieved. However, when the youth really appeared before her, her heart couldn't help itself from trembling. The scene that occurred in the restaurant 3 months ago had long since left a lingering shadow within her heart. What, Miss Tong, are you really that surprised? Duan Lingtian grinned as if he was greeting a familiar person. You know her? Su Li's brows knitted as he glanced at Duan Lingtian with a weird gaze. Xiao Yu, Xiao Xuan, and Tian Hu glanced at Duan Lingtian as well, as they had all noticed that when this Tong Li saw Duan Lingtian, it was like a mouse seeing a cat. They vaguely guessed that something they didn't know about had surely happened between Duan Lingtian and Tong Li. Tong Li took a deep breath. Only now did she realize that this was Paladin Academy and that she was very safe here. Instantly, her eyes went cold as she stared at Duan Lingtian. This miss has been looking for you for 3 months. Never did I expect you to deliver yourself to me. Let me see where you hide this time. You're dead for sure. I'll get my cousin brother to catch you, and I'll tear you into pieces with my bare hands before burning your bones and scattering your ashes. What, could it be that Miss Tong thinks that since this is Paladin Academy, I won't dare to touch you? Duan Lingtian's eyes narrowed into a line as he heard Tong Li's threats, and a sneer emerged on the corners of his mouth. So what if I think that? Tong Li grunted coldly as her eyes flickered with killing intent. Never in her lifetime would she forget what happened 3 months ago. Only when the violet-clothed youth dies before her will she be able to vent the hatred within her heart. Whoosh! A violet shadow flashed by. Slap! At the same time, the clear sound of a slap echoed out, and Duan Lingtian, who had left his seat, was seated once more. Since she wanted to tear him into pieces and burn his bones before scattering his ashes, he didn't need to be courteous anymore. You, Tong Li, whose face had an extra hand imprint, had an icy cold gaze. This violet-clothed youth actually hit her again. And he even did it in front of so many Paladin Academy students. How would she stand her ground at Paladin Academy in the future? Her gaze was completely enveloped with rage and hatred, and the hand that held her black whip even started to tremble, but she didn't dare to make a move, because she knew that once she did, she would suffer even greater retaliation. Su Li, Xiao Yu, and the others were dumbstruck, as they realized that there seemed to be a deep grudge that was impossible to reconcile between Duan Lingtian and the red-clothed girl. They had all heard the ruthless things the red-clothed girl said earlier. She actually hated Duan Lingtian to such a degree. The girl behind Tong Li never imagined that Duan Lingtian would dare hit Tong Li, and after being dumbstruck for a moment, her face went grim as she looked at Duan Lingtian and shouted, in a grim voice, "You're dead. Do you know who she is? Yes, you're dead, you actually dared to hit Miss Li." The young man with a wretched appearance looked at Duan Lingtian as if he had seen something unbelievable. Who she is? Duan Lingtian lightly smiled before looking at Tong Li once more. Isn't it only the fair Sun County's county governor's daughter, the cousin sister of 5th Prince, Miss Tong? I'm right, aren't I? The fair Sun County's county governor's daughter. 5th Prince's cousin sister. Maybe the Paladin Academy students present didn't pay any attention to the first identity, but the second one was more than enough to make everyone besides Duan Lingtian experience changes in their expressions. The 5th Prince was a descendant of the imperial family, the son of the current emperor. A status so exalted that not many people in the entire Crimson Sky Kingdom could compare. Xiao Yu, Xiao Xuan, and Tian Hu's expressions went grim, as they never expected the red-clothed girl had such an identity. She was actually the cousin sister of the 5th Prince. Su Li's brows knitted, and his eyes were suffused with a trace of coldness. You know this misidentity and you still dared hit this miss. Tong Li stared at Duan Lingtian like she was looking at a madman. If I hadn't hit you just now, would you have let me off? Duan Lingtian smiled indifferently. How could that be possible? This miss will return those gifts you gave me that day 100-fold, 1,000-fold, or even 10,000-fold. Hoping that this miss will let you off is utterly a fool's dream. Tong Li sneered. She felt that Duan Lingtian was imagining the impossible. In her eyes, Duan Lingtian was no different from a dead man. That's it. If you wouldn't have let me off even if I hadn't hit you, then why would I be afraid of you? The corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth curled into a malicious smile. Whoosh! His body flashed out once more. Slap, 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 comma. Clear slapping sounds echoes out time after time, and before long, Tong Li's face become like a pig's head, just like it did 3 months ago. The burning pain that came from her face caused Tong Li to be practically numb, but she currently seemed to feel no pain, as she only felt more embarrassed than had ever been before. Her eyes were filled with malice. What? Duan Lingtian sneered as an awe-inspiring killing intent focused within his eyes. This Tong Li was on her high horse that day. She was acting as if everyone else was only an ant in front of her. After that, he taught Tong Li a lesson, and he originally thought that she would repent and mend her ways, but the facts proved that his education towards Tong Li that day was a failure. Otherwise, Tong Li wouldn't run up to him and be enraged and threaten to tear him to pieces before burning his bones and scattering his ashes. Since Tong Li had long since hated him to the core, it was no use crying over spilled milk, so why not teach her another lesson? In any case, he never once thought that Tong Li would shake his hand and make peace, so now he decided to be a tad more carefree and do whatever he wanted to do. Detest someone, then beat them. Beat them until they didn't dare be complacent again. Beat them until they didn't dare be arrogant again. Beat them until they didn't dare talk back again. Tong Li inhaled a deep breath and didn't dare speak another word, as she didn't doubt in the slightest that if she were to voice another ruthless remark, this violet-clothed youth would hit her without the slightest hesitation. She chose to endure. Her heart trembled and warped as she noticed the surrounding gazes that looked at her within a strange manner. The hatred in her eyes were practically at its limits. In this lifetime, if she lived, then there would be no violet-clothed youth, and if the violet-clothed youth lived, then she would not. You'll regret it. Tong Li couldn't help herself from leaving a last remark before turning around and leaving, not even daring to look back. Only now did the girl that was originally following behind Tong Li recover from being struck with terror. She briefly glanced at Duan Lingtian with eyes filled with terror before leaving to chase after Tong Li. Within the spacious cafeteria, the corner at which Duan Lingtian sat was deathly silent. Everyone who didn't know Duan Lingtian looked at him with gazes filled with terror. This violet-clothed youth actually was not afraid of even the 5th prince. Who the heck was he? Being stared at by so many people caused Duan Lingtian to frown. He coldly swept them with his gaze. Instantly, these people withdrew their gazes, and didn't dare look at Duan Lingtian again. They couldn't calm the shock in their hearts for a long time. Only then did Duan Lingtian take his seat. Duan Lingtian, Xiao Yu had a bitter smile on his face. He never imagined that Duan Lingtian was so bold that he actually even dared to beat the cousin sister of the fifth prince, and even beat her to that extent. For a moment, he didn't even know what to say. Duan Lingtian, you're too rash. Xiao Xuan frowned. He was a member of the Xiao clan, so he understood the fifth prince and knew that the fifth prince was a fierce and ambitious person. He knew that the fifth prince was no simple figure, even to the extent that he might become the next emperor of the Crimson Sky Kingdom. Duan Lingtian, did you form a deep and irreconcilable grudge with that Tong Li before? Su Li asked Duan Lingtian. This was exactly the question that was within the hearts of Xiao Yu and the others. Yes. Duan Lingtian nodded, then he slowly recounted the conflict between him and Tong Li 3 months ago. So that's how it is. Looks like even if you hadn't hit her today, it would still be impossible for her to let you off. Tianhu came to an understanding. Xiao Yu and Xiao Xuan both came to understand this as well, so Duan Lingtian and Tong Li had long since been like fire and ice, thus Duan Lingtian teaching Tong Li a lesson today counted for nothing. In other words, this time it was she who came of her own accord to seek a beating. Su Li's eyes were suffused with coldness. You can put it that way. Duan Lingtian smiled indifferently with a completely unconcerned expression. Enough. Let's not speak of her. Talking about her is just depressing. However, he being unconcerned didn't mean that Xiao Yu and the others weren't concerned either. Duan Lingtian, why don't put up in the academy with me and Su Li from now on? Even though that fifth prince has an exalted status, he wouldn't dare act rashly within Paladin Academy, Tianhu suggested. Yeah, Duan Lingtian, I think Tianhu is right, you should put up in the academy, Xiao Yu and Xiao Xuan said to Duan Lingtian. Su Li gazed at Duan Lingtian as well. Duan Lingtian could notice that Su Li's cold eyes had a rare trace of concern, and he couldn't help but feel warmth in his heart. I know you all have good intentions, but I've got a plan, so you don't have to worry. Duan Lingtian lightly smiled. As his eyes focused, a fierce light flashed within. Whoosh! Suddenly, a black bolt of lightning flashed out of Duan Lingtian's sleeve before directly jumping onto the table. It was precisely the little black python that Duan Lingtian had brought along with him. This little black python extended its head and sucked in a bowl of meat and vegetable stock, eating with great relish. This is. Xiao Yu's and the others' gazes were all attracted by the little black python. Xiao Xuan's gaze descended onto the little black python as he exclaimed, in a low voice, what an unusual snake. The gold striations on its body seemed to be like ancient text. There's even a single horn on its head. What breed is this? I've never seen nor heard of it before. Duan Lingtian, is this your pet? Tianhu gulped down a mouthful of saliva, as even he could perceive that this little python wasn't simple. Not mentioning anything else, just the speed at which the little python flashed out earlier was something he couldn't even catch a trace of. All he felt was a black bolt of lightning flash past before the little python appeared out of thin air. Yes, Duan Lingtian didn't deny it, even he never expected that this mischievous little fellow would come out. He swung his palm across to drag it back into his sleeve. Hiss hiss, the little python swiftly flicked its tongue as if it was protesting against Duan Lingtian's actions, but unfortunately, its protests were to no avail. After the stir the little python made, the atmosphere at Duan Lingtian's table eased up slightly, but Xiao Yu and the others were still worried about Duan Lingtian, as the person Duan Lingtian offended was the imperial family's fifth prince after all. Chapter 0152. After sleeping for another afternoon, Duan Lingtian yawned as he walked out of Paladin Academy with Xiao Yu and Xiao Xuan. After parting ways with the two, Duan Lingtian seemed to have noticed something. His cloudy eyes flashed with a trace of a bright light, and a sneer appeared on the corners of his mouth. Duan Lingtian shrugged his shoulders and didn't directly return home but instead walked towards a secluded street before entering a small alley. Whoosh, whoosh. At almost the exact instant that Duan Lingtian walked into the small alley, two extremely swift figures flashed towards him from behind before stopping him from both the front and back. Since when did Duan clan members become the dogs of branch clan disciples? Duan Lingtian's eyes narrowed, seeming to not be taken by surprise by the two figures' appearance. He noticed at the moment he left Paladin Academy, there was a gloomy gaze staring at him from afar, and he only slightly shot a glance before noticing Duan Rong, who was concealed at the side. There were two more people beside Duan Rong, and relying upon the memories of rebirth Martial Emperor and the counter-tracking experience he gained during his time as a weapon specialist in his previous life, as well as his spiritual force, which was currently comparable to a nascent soul martial artist's, it only took a short moment for Duan Lingtian to roughly discern that the cultivation levels of the two people beside Duan Rong were at least at the 7th level of the origin core stage. At present, the two middle-aged men's faces sank as they heard what Duan Lingtian said. They didn't think that this youth would actually be able to guess their identity. An ill omen suddenly surfaced within their hearts, as this youth was actually able to be so composed even at such a time. Could it be that he has something to rely on? Or maybe there is a powerhouse protecting him? The two middle-aged men subconsciously observed the surroundings for a moment. According to their knowledge, this youth seemed to only have a 7th-level origin core martial artist to protect him. Moreover, it seemed that the 7th-level origin core martial artist wasn't present today. After they realized that there was no one else around, they both heaved sighs of relief. Are all the Duan clan members so cowardly? The sneer on the corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth grew even wider, and his voice was filled with a mocking tone. Kid, if you want to blame someone, then blame yourself for offending someone you shouldn't have offended, the middle-aged man behind him said in a low voice as his gaze went cold, and at the moment he finished speaking, he looked towards the middle-aged man in the front and nodded. Whoosh, whoosh. At almost the same time, the figures of the two middle-aged men jerked and they seemed to transform into two incomparably swift bolts of lightning as they flashed towards Duan Lingtian. Above their heads, 120 ancient mammoth silhouettes appeared. Two 9th-level origin core martial artists. That Duan Rulei really thinks highly of me. Faced with the pincer attack of two 9th-level origin core martial artists, Duan Lingtian didn't seem to mind at all, as he stood there unmoving on the spot. Even his voice was extremely tranquil. Even though both of the middle-aged men felt that the youth's reaction was slightly strange, they had no way of backing down now. Die. Their eyes emitted a murderous gleam as origin energy burst forth from their palms and enveloped downwards upon Duan Lingtian. Originally, for the sake of my deadbeat dad, I had no intention of becoming enemies with anyone from the Duan clan. However, since you two are holding a candle to the devil, then go to hell. At this critical instant, Duan Lingtian's speech increased in speed. And in the next moment, he lifted his hand. Whoosh! A black stream of light flashed out from his sleeve and moved like lightning as if it was a death god's scythe whistling out. Spirit Serpent Movement Technique. And at almost the exact same time, Duan Lingtian's legs jerked as he instantly moved aside. Bang! Followed by that black bolt of lightning piercing through their chests, the origin energy on the two middle-aged men dissipated. Momentum brought their bodies to move forward and collide with each other before fiercely crashing onto the ground, lifeless. Whoosh! The black lightning bolt moved in flashes before descending onto Duan Lingtian's shoulder. Hiss hiss, the little black python flicked its tongue and licked Duan Lingtian's cheek, and its pair of incomparably intelligent, small eyes turned about. Duan Lingtian squatted down and searched the two corpses for a moment. So poor, there's only 500,000 silver or so on the two of them. Forget it, no matter how small a mosquito is, it's still meat, every bit counts. After putting away the stack of silver within his spatial ring, Duan Lingtian grabbed the little black python from his shoulder, held it in his palm, and said, with a light smile, "You did a good job, little fellow. I'll get someone to make something good for you when we get home." The little black python seemed to understand what Duan Lingtian said, as it lightly nodded, and its agile body wiggled in an incomparably exultant manner. As expected, a nascent soul stage fierce beast is able to understand human speech to a certain extent. However, Little Black and Little White have only recently stepped into the nascent soul stage, and thus require some guidance before being able to completely understand human speech, Duan Lingtian thought in his heart as he continued forward and took a few turns before finally returning to his courtyard house. Within his spacious courtyard house, Duan Rong sat cross-legged as he enjoyed a servant girl's massage. He had a bite of apple in his mouth as a slight smile appeared on the corners of his mouth. The moment he thought about how he wouldn't see that violet-clothed youth anymore from tomorrow onwards, he couldn't help but arouse a sense of delight within his heart. So you offended this young master. Even just before you died, you probably don't even know who sent them to kill you, right? The more he thought about it, the more Duan Rong felt happy within his heart. Unfortunately, however, he wasn't able to be happy for long. That night, an unexpected guest arrived in his courtyard house. Duan Lingxing, cousin brother, what are you doing here? Duan Rong was slightly surprised when he noticed Duan Lingxing's arrival, but his eyes still had an unceasing smile. You seem very happy, Duan Lingxing slowly said. Of course, when I think about how I don't need to see that arrogant kid anymore, I feel extremely delighted within my heart. Right, cousin brother, you've come so late. Is there something you need from me? Because of the dim lighting, Duan Rong didn't notice Duan Lingxing's slightly gloomy face. Duan Lingxing's eyes focused as he slowly said, I'm afraid you can't do as you wish on this matter anymore. Cousin brother, what do you mean by that? When Duan Rong finally realized that something was strange, his heart jerked, and the smile on his face completely froze. Could something have gone wrong? It shouldn't have. That violet-clothed youth was alone when he left Paladin Academy today, and even if he wasn't alone, that masked middle-aged man by his side was only a 7th-level Origin Core martial artist. Under the attack of 2 9th-level Origin Core martial artists, he should have died without a doubt. The 2 9th-level Origin Core martial artists my father appointed to you didn't return to the Duan clan estate to report the results to my father even until dusk. So my father sent someone out to search for a while, and who would have thought that he would actually find their corpses near Paladin Academy? Duan Lingxing's expression was incomparably gloomy. Who the heck did this cousin brother of his offend? No, impossible, it's impossible. Duan Rong hurriedly shook his head with a face full of disbelief. He was unwilling to believe that all of this was true. Duan Lingxing frowned as he asked, in a low voice, didn't you say that he only had a 7th-level Origin Core martial artist by his side? I don't know. At that time, there was indeed only a 7th-level Origin Core martial artist at his side. This is something our branch clan's 8th elder saw with his own 2 eyes as well. Duan Rong laughed bitterly. Humph. Looks like the background of this enemy of yours isn't that simple. Both of the 9th-level Origin Core martial artists my father appointed to you were killed with a single blow, pierced through the heart with a sharp weapon. The person that killed them acted quickly and decisively. It was almost certainly a nascent soul martial artist who did it. In other words, that person you want to kill had a nascent soul martial artist protecting him. Duan Lingxing coldly grunted before once again looking at Duan Rong. You better not let the cat out of the bag, because if he finds out that it was you who did it, your life will be in danger. Duan Rong was so afraid that his face went ghastly pale after he heard what Duan Lingxing said. Never had he imagined that the violet-clothed youth actually had a nascent soul martial artist at his side. After all, even the branch family that he originated from only had 2 supreme elders that were existences at the nascent soul stage. Cousin brother, how did uncle decide to deal with this matter? I feel that the violet-clothed youth will suspect me sooner or later. Depending on what uncle does, I'll follow you home and stay at the Duan clan estate for some time. Duan Rong's voice was slightly trembling, as he was afraid. Don't worry, no matter who he is, anyone who dares kill a member of our Duan clan will certainly die. A trace of coldness appeared in Duan Lingxing's gaze. Duan Rong heaved a sigh of relief upon hearing Duan Lingxing's reply. You better lay low for the time being, and don't make trouble for me, do you understand? Duan Lingxing glared at Duan Rong, causing Duan Rong to hurriedly nod without daring to have the slightest hesitation. Inside his room, Duan Lingtian spread out the materials that Shangquan had gathered today, and his brows slightly rose. I didn't think that Shangquan would be able to find more than half of the materials I needed within only a day's time. It's sufficient to inscribe 2 inscriptions. Duan Lingtian took a deep breath, then he raised his hand and withdrew his violet myrtle flexible sword. At the same time, he took off the spatial ring on his hand. The offensive inscription he planned to inscribe was named the Bone Corrosion Inscription. Once activated, the Bone Corrosion Inscription would pour out with the strength of bone corrosion. Unless one was at least a half-step void stage martial artist, there would be no hope of dodging nor curing it. Once hit with the inscription, the bones of the entire body will be instantly corroded into ashes, and only flesh will remain. Completely and utterly dead. Even though a person hit by the bone corrosion inscription would die in an instant, at the moment before death, they would have to endure extreme pain, a pain that penetrated into the heart and bones, a pain that was unimaginable to an ordinary person. Deep into the night, Duan Lingtian finally completed the 2 bone corrosion inscriptions and inscribed them respectively on his violet myrtle flexible sword and spatial ring. It was a high-ranked inscription after all, and besides being able to be inscribed onto the spatial ring, it was even possible to flawlessly coexist with the blood crescent inscription that was attached to the violet myrtle flexible sword. After completing the 2 inscriptions, Duan Lingtian's strained spiritual force finally relaxed. A wave of exhaustion swept over him before he drifted off into a deep slumber. When he woke up the next day, he still felt terribly fatigued, and his complexion didn't look so good. "Tian, are you okay?" Li Ru had a face full of worry when she saw her son's complexion. "Scoundrel, what did you do last night?" "Yes, young master, why's your complexion so bad?" Li Fei and Ke both had faces full of worry and their hearts ached unceasingly. "It's nothing, I only inscribed 2 inscriptions. Don't worry, I'll be able to recover once I return from the academy today." Duan Lingtian shook his head with a smile and left directly for Paladin Academy after finishing his breakfast. Chapter 0153. Within the classroom, Sima Chongfeng stood at the podium as he slowly recounted the Tao of being a mastermind. Below the podium, the violet-clothed youth lied on the table sound asleep, forming a sharp contrast compared to the other 17 students that were listening in earnest. Did this fellow Duan Lingtian not sleep last night? He slept the entire afternoon yesterday. Even if he really didn't sleep last night, he wouldn't be this tired, right? Xiao Yu and Xiao Xuan looked at Duan Lingtian, who was in a deep slumber, with faces filled with astonishment. "Enough, all of you, properly reflect on what I spoke about earlier," Sima Chongfeng said to the other students, then he walked up to Duan Lingtian's table before lightly knocking the table. "Duan Lingtian, follow me outside for a moment." Duan Lingtian raised his head and rubbed his dry eyes. When he noticed Sima Chongfeng, he laughed embarrassedly before following obediently. Duan Lingtian originally expected that the reason Sima Chongfeng called him out was about the matter of him sleeping during class. Unexpectedly, however, "Are you an inscription master?" Sima Chongfeng's eyes were illuminated with wisdom as his gaze focused on Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian's heart jerked and his body shuddered. He completely woke up in an instant and glanced deeply at Sima Chongfeng. "Teacher Sima, why do you ask?" Sima Chongfeng lightly smiled. "I've done some research on the Tao of inscription. According to my knowledge, exhaustion of vitality is divided into various types, where your exhaustion is obviously caused by the overconsumption of spiritual force. And this condition would only appear on an inscription master." Sima Chengfeng spoke on the subject with great familiarity. Duan Lingtian's pupils constricted. Although Sima Chongfeng said that he had only done some research on the Tao of inscription, Duan Lingtian knew that he was just being humble. Not mentioning anything else, just what he said now was something that no ordinary inscription master would be capable of. Obviously, this teacher Sima was an extremely experienced inscription master. "I never thought that you'd be an inscription master as well, teacher." Duan Lingtian lightly smiled. He didn't deny the fact that he was an inscription master. Since Sima Chengfeng was able to discern that he had overconsumed his spiritual force, then Sima Chongfeng had obviously confirmed that he was an inscription master, and thus, even if he not admitted it, Sima Chongfeng would not believe him. "I can be considered to have only dabbled in the Tao of inscription. You're only at the core formation stage and only have a limited amount of spiritual force, so there's no need to waste too much energy on the art of inscription. Once your cultivation advances, your spiritual force will naturally increase in tow, and thus spending your energy on the art of inscription in the future is the right way." Sima Chongfeng had an earnest expression as he gradually guided his student. He obviously thought that Duan Lingtian's condition of overconsumption of spiritual force was because he went overboard when studying the art of inscription. "Yes, teacher." Duan Lingtian lightly nodded as knew that Sima Chongfeng was saying all this out of good intentions. "Focusing on the advancement of your cultivation is the right way for your age. If you're really interested in the art of inscription in the future, although the inscriptions I possess are limited, I can slightly guide you and save you from taking many detours on your path of learning," Sima Chongfeng continued, as he obviously seemed to care very much for Duan Lingtian, this student of his. "Guide me." The corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth twitched. He possessed the memories of Rebirth Martial Emperor, and the inscription art of Rebirth Martial Emperor could absolutely be considered unparalleled under the heavens. Not to mention this small little Crimson Sky Kingdom, even across the entire Cloud Continent, there might not be another who could compete with Rebirth Martial Emperor on the art of inscription. "Thank you, teacher." However, Duan Lingtian still expressed his thanks to Sima Chongfeng, as no matter what, Sima Chongfeng's suggestions were still out of his good intentions. Even though the art of inscription that he held was even more than enough to be the ancestor of Sima Chongfeng. You can return now. Duan Lingtian followed behind Sima Chongfeng and returned to the classroom as instructed. In next to no time, the morning classes came to an end. Xiao Yu and Xiao Xuan both arrived beside Duan Lingtian with eyes that emitted a dubious sense that any man would understand. Duan Lingtian, you're still young. You have to do some things in moderation so that you don't harm your health. FK, what are you guys talking about? Duan Lingtian glared at the two of them. How could he not know what these two filthy fellows were talking about? Look at you, getting angry from being embarrassed, right? We're all grown men. Isn't romance between men and women something extremely normal? Xiao Xuan laughed. Yeah, why else would you be so drowsy today? You were even called out by teacher Sima to be reprimanded. Xiao Yu agreed with a nod, speaking in a reasonable and justifiable manner. I don't have time for this. Duan Lingtian rolled his eyes at the two of them before heading straight for the cafeteria. When they arrived at the cafeteria, they noticed that Su Li and Tianhu had already taken a table. Su Li, Tianhu, you two are actually here earlier than us. Duan Lingtian was slightly surprised. That fellow, Niu Meng, seemed to be busy today and left early. Tuanhu laughed, then his face turned serious. Duan Lingtian, that fifth prince hasn't come looking for trouble with you, right? Duan Lingtian shook his head. Even if the fifth prince were to come looking for trouble, his movements shouldn't be so quick. People like the fifth prince, who grew up in a place filled with mutual deceit like the imperial family, were undoubtedly the most cautious. Based solely upon his attitude towards Tong Li, as long as the fifth prince hasn't fully investigated his background, the fifth prince would definitely not make a move against him. After all, the attitude which he portrayed yesterday seemed to show that he had something to rely upon and that he was not one bit afraid of the fifth prince. This was something that many people saw yesterday. It's that Duan Rong again. Tianhu's gaze looked towards one of the two young men that were walking over from afar. Duan Lingtian, this Duan Rong seems somewhat different today. Why do I feel like his gaze towards you is completely different from yesterday? It seems more like he's afraid of you. What did you do to him? Xiao Yu looked at Duan Lingtian as he spoke with a wondering expression. But what he noticed was that Duan Lingtian's gaze was currently fierce like lightning, and there was even traces of dense and bloodthirsty killing intent being emitted from his body. The killing intent swept out, and although it wasn't targeting him, it still caused his heart to shudder. Su Li, Xiao Xuan, and Tianhu's faces went pale as well, as they were all affected by Duan Lingtian's killing intent. Their gaze descended upon the young man beside Duan Rong in unison. It's him. Xiao Xuan recognized the young man with but a glance. The Duan clan's second master's son, Duan Lingxing. Never had Duan Lingtian imagined that he would actually see Duan Lingxing, this person that he hated to the bones, within Paladin Academy. Duan Lingtian's heart was trembling, as the scenes of Duan Lingxing flaunting his strength and heavily injuring himself, K.R. and Li Fei flashed before his eyes as if they were happening right before him. Duan Lingxing. Duan Lingtian's voice emitted an incomparable coldness, and his hand had already moved to be placed atop the hilt of the violet myrtle flexible sword on his waist. At this moment, he would only need but a thought before he would swing out his sword to kill Duan Lingxing. Abruptly being enveloped by Duan Lingtian's bloodthirsty killing intent caused Duan Rong's expression to turn ghastly pale and his legs to start trembling. He currently like he was on a single boat floating on the ocean and was in danger of capsizing at any moment. This feeling was extremely difficult to bear, and practically suffocating. He knows cousin brother. Duan Rong took a deep breath, and forcefully withstood the bloodthirsty killing intent. He had a ghastly pale face as he stared at the violet-clothed youth in the distance. He noticed that the violet-clothed youth that he hated to the bones seemed to hate his cousin brother to the bones. What was going on? Who could tell him? In the instant that Duan Lingxing was enveloped by this bloodthirsty killing intent, he felt it to be slightly familiar. When he circulated his origin energy to forcefully withstand this killing intent and looked at the source, his gaze descended upon the violet-clothed youth that sat in the distance. 2 years had passed, and the violet-clothed youth from before obviously had matured substantially, but he still recognized the violet-clothed youth with a single glance. Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingxing's pupils constricted as his eyes emitted a killing intent so dense it was difficult to suppress. Never had he imagined that Duan Lingtian would actually appear within Paladin Academy. There was only one possibility as to why he could appear within Paladin Academy. Duan Lingtian had become a student here. If he wasn't wrong, this Duan Lingtian was only 18 now. Had he passed the test within one of the 18 counties to enter Paladin Academy at the age of 18? Such natural talent was even more monstrous than the Duan Rufeng of before. There was only one thought within his heart: this Duan Lingtian must die. He could imagine how if Duan Lingtian were to stay alive, Duan Lingtian would undoubtedly become a great calamity for himself. Duan Lingtian, I'm really surprised. You've not only inherited the natural talent of your short-lived father, you've even outdone him and entered Paladin Academy at the young age of 18. Duan Lingxing walked over to arrive before Duan Lingtian's table, and a sneer appeared on the corners of his mouth. I'm extremely surprised as well. The son of a cripple is actually at Paladin Academy. Tisk tisk, if I'm not wrong, you should have gotten a place from the Duan clan's recommendation quota and were only able to enter Paladin Academy because of it, right? As expected, the son of a cripple is trash that needs to use a backdoor to enter Paladin Academy. Duan Lingtian's gaze went cold as he gave tit for tat. A shapeless aura shot out from their bodies and unceasingly clashed against each other. Everyone present could feel the imposing atmosphere. Duan Lingxing's body trembled. The dense killing intent in his eyes had reached an extreme as he said, with an extremely low voice, "You dare insult my father? Have I said something wrong?" Duan Lingtian sneered without a trace of fear. The surrounding Paladin Academy students, including Su Li, Xiao Yu, and the others were all stunned. They noticed that from the moment Duan Lingxing appeared, Duan Lingtian seemed to become a different person. That was the gaze of someone who was looking at the greatest enemy in his life, and it looked like Duan Lingtian wished for nothing more than to pounce on Duan Lingxing and shred him to pieces. Duan Lingxing, on the other hand, seemed to be similarly filled with bloodthirsty enmity from the moment he noticed Duan Lingtian. These two people seemed like they were born enemies. Duan Rong hid behind Duan Lingxing, narrowly avoiding the killing intent that swept in his direction from Duan Lingtian, and asked, with great difficulty, cousin brother, who is he? Duan Lingtian, could it be that this violet-clothed youth is a Duan clan member as well? Duan Lingxing's eyes narrowed into a line as he spoke in a cold voice. His origins are no small matter. His father is that short-lived guy of our Duan clan, Duan Rufeng. Chapter 0154. Short-lived. Duan Lingtian's gaze became even more icy cold. Even though he didn't have any feelings towards his deadbeat father, it was his father after all. He was also the husband of his mother who he respected the most. How could he allow Duan Lingxing to disrespect his father like this? Duan Rong was stunned. Duan Rufeng. This was a name he'd heard of before. Duan Rufeng, the former peerless genius of the Imperial City's Duan clan, a figure who suddenly appeared on the horizon like a comet and hasn't been heard of since he vanished 18 years ago. But even then, he was still deeply remembered by many. If Duan Rufeng hadn't vanished, then he would be the Duan clan's third master. No, if Duan Rufeng hadn't vanished, as long as he was willing, even the position of the Duan clan's patriarch would be his. Never had Duan Rong imagined that the violet-clothed youth he hated to the bones was actually the son of Duan Rufeng. At the same time, the gazes of everyone present descended upon Duan Lingtian, especially Xiao Xuan's, whose pupils couldn't help but constrict. Duan Lingtian actually was a true member of the Duan clan, and moreover, the son of Duan Rufeng, the one who was formerly publicly acknowledged as the greatest genius in the entire Crimson Sky Kingdom. Xiao Yu and Tian, who had more or less heard of Duan Rufeng, but never had they imagined that Duan Lingtian actually had such an identity. And he was even a direct descendant of the Imperial City's Duan clan. Duan Rufeng. Su Li's eyes shone with a strand of an odd light as he glanced deeply at Duan Lingtian. This youth is actually the son of that Duan Rufeng. I never imagined that Duan Rufeng actually had a living descendant. This youth obviously wasn't recommended into Paladin Academy by the Duan clan, but he was able to pass the entrance test within one of the 18 counties to enter Paladin Academy at such an age. His natural talent is truly monstrous. Some of the Paladin Academy students whispered amongst themselves. Duan Lingtian abruptly stood up, his gaze flashing with a cold light as he spoke in an icy cold voice that seemed to be echoing out of an ice pit. Duan Lingxing, the reason I came to the Imperial City and entered Paladin Academy was precisely to kill you and to repay the gifts you bestowed upon me 2 years ago. Now, I formally challenge you to a life-and-death battle. Do you dare to accept my challenge? He wished for nothing more than to directly attack and kill Duan Lingxing, but he understood that he couldn't be rash due to his current circumstances. He would have to kill Duan Lingxing in an open and just method so that the Duan clan's second master, Duan Rulei, could only look on helplessly when such a loss was dealt upon him. What Duan Lingtian said caused everyone present to be dumbfounded. Has this Duan Lingtian gone mad? Duan Lingxing is a grade 4 student, and he has allegedly stepped into the 9th level of the core formation stage. Even if this Duan Lingtian's natural talent is good, he's only around the age of 18 after all, and moreover, he is only a grade 1 student. Many Paladin Academy students were stunned by what Duan Lingtian said. Duan Lingtian, don't be rash. Xiao Xuan's face went grim as he hurriedly tried to dissuade Duan Lingtian. Even though he knew that Duan Lingtian was strong, and he believed that Duan Lingtian would one day surpass Duan Lingxing, the current Duan Lingtian was undoubtedly slightly inferior to Duan Lingxing. He had seen Duan Lingtian's strength, and although it wasn't bad, he was only just slightly stronger than Su Li and could be considered to be peerless at the 7th level of the core formation stage. But if he were to encounter a martial artist at the 8th level of the core formation stage, it would require great effort to withstand, and Duan Lingxing was in existence at the 9th level of the core formation stage. Xiao Yu and Tian, who became aware of Duan Lingxing's cultivation level from the surrounding discussion, their expressions went grim, and they followed to dissuade Duan Lingtian. Only Su Li seemed to have understood something and didn't try to dissuade Duan Lingtian when he noticed the cold light flashing within Duan Lingtian's eyes and the angle at which the corners of his mouth were curled. You challenge me, and it's even a life and death battle. Duan Lingxing was in slight disbelief when he heard what Duan Lingtian said. He wished for nothing more than to kill Duan Lingtian from the moment he laid eyes upon Duan Lingtian, but unfortunately, this was Paladin Academy, and the consequences of killing another for no reason was something that even he as the son of the Duan clan's second master could not bear. But it would be different if a life and death battle pact were to be established. Once a life and death battle pact was established, Paladin Academy would not interfere even if he were to kill Duan Lingtian. What, you don't dare? Duan Lingtian sneered, just when Duan Lingxing was about to speak of his agreement. Cousin brother, Duan Rong spoke out with eyes that emitted a sense of fear, and said, in a low voice, this Duan Lingtian is precisely the violet-clothed youth that injured me 2 months ago. Didn't you say last night that we can't act rashly? And shouldn't we first investigate his background before asking uncle to send out his men to deal with him? What, he's the violet-clothed youth you spoke of? Duan Lingxing's pupils constricted. The only reason he came to the cafeteria with Duan Rong today was precisely to take a look at the enemy of his cousin brother, but he never imagined that the enemy of his cousin brother was precisely Duan Lingtian. Yes, Duan Rong nodded and said, with a face full of fear, cousin brother, this Duan Lingtian took the initiative to issue a challenge, and this matter seems odd. You must not agree to his challenge. He was afraid from the moment he heard that Duan Lingtian was the son of Duan Rufeng, as although Duan Rufeng had vanished for nearly 20 years, there has never been anyone who could be certain of his death. Some people even spread the word that Duan Rufeng might still be alive. If Duan Rufeng was really alive, then this Duan Lingtian would have a backing that no one in the entire Crimson Sky Kingdom could compare to. Humph, I'll decide myself. Duan Lingxing's eyes narrowed. Would he refuse Duan Lingtian's challenge? The answer was no. After hearing what Duan Rong said, the killing intent within Duan Lingxing's heart grew even stronger. This Duan Lingtian actually had a nascent soul martial artist by his side to protect him. He had a feeling that if he were to miss this opportunity, then wanting to kill Duan Lingtian in the future would be even more difficult than climbing the heavens. Ha 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 ha, Duan Lingtian couldn't help but laugh out loud as he watched Duan Lingxing and Duan Rong whispering to each other for so long. His voice was filled with arrogance and unruliness as he said, Duan Lingxing, as expected of the son of the Duan clan's trash second master. You don't even dare to accept a life and death battle against an 18-year-old kid like me. Pooh why? Pooh why? Duan Lingtian had only just finished speaking when every student present looked at Duan Lingxing with an odd gaze. Duan Lingxing isn't really afraid of accepting Duan Lingtian's life and death battle challenge, right? Is he a man or not? A grade 4 student is afraid of accepting a grade 1 student's life and death battle challenge. Moreover, the challenger is only just a kid. This Duan Lingxing probably won't be able to lift his head up within Paladin Academy and even the Imperial City in the future. Some students voiced out their opinions, as they craved nothing more than to stir up trouble. These voices entered Duan Lingxing's ears and were like needles pricking him. His gaze went cold as he looked at Duan Lingtian with a frosty expression. Duan Ling Tian, you're even more arrogant than your father all those years ago. Since you're courting death, I'll send you off myself. I accept your life and death battle challenge. Duan Lingxing agreed in a straightforward manner. Cousin brother. Duan Rong's face went pale, as he had a feeling that something wasn't right, and he felt perturbed in his heart. Shut up. However, after being glared at by Duan Lingxing, Duan Rong immediately didn't dare make another sound. He knew that once this cousin brother of his made a decision, it wasn't something he could interfere with. Meanwhile, more and more people arrived at the corner of the cafeteria where Duan Lingtian's table was situated. Suddenly, I never expected that I would encounter such an interesting matter while just having a meal. If you two want a life and death battle, then this old fellow will join in on the fun and bear witness for you too. An aged voice echoed downwards from the cafeteria pavilion above. The cafeteria pavilion wasn't open to Paladin Academy students. Meanwhile, a gray-robed old man slowly walked down from the cafeteria pavilion. Vice Dean, comma. Instantly, the students respectfully greeted the old man. Duan Ling Tian looked over, and what he saw was a thin, gray-robed old man with an ordinary appearance. Although he was old, the old man seemed to be full of vigor and a bright light flashed within his eyes. This was an expert. At least to the current Duan Ling Tian, this old man was an expert. Vice Dean, even the arrogant and unruly Duan Ling Xing bowed respectfully upon seeing the old man. Duan Ling Tian lightly nodded to the old man as well. You two want a life and death battle, right? The old man's brows knitted as a trace of a smile of anticipation appeared on the corners of his mouth. Then I'll bear witness for you two. However, do you two want to notify your seniors to attend the battle? This matter is no small matter, as it could easily mean life or death. No, Duan Ling Tian shook his head. Notify his seniors to attend the battle. He knew that if his mother were to come, she would certainly not agree to him carrying out a life and death battle with Duan Lingxing. The old man gazed at Duan Lingxing as he asked, how about you? Duan Lingxing's icy cold gaze descended upon Duan Lingtian as he slowly said, I don't need to either, as the one who's going to die isn't me in any case. Duan Lingxing's words were filled with confidence. Go to the martial arts practice grounds. The old man nodded and his body jerked. His entire body seemed to have vanished on the spot, and when he reappeared, he was already over 10 meters away. What swift speed! Duan Lingtian's gaze focused, and he had a face full of surprise. The old man's speed was so much faster than Shang Quan's that it was on a different level. Of course, it was also because Shang Quan hadn't fully recovered his strength. Once Duan Lingtian steps into the origin core stage and refines the grade 8 spirit cleansing pill for Shang Quan to consume, Shang Quan's strength will surely recover to the void prying stage. At that time, the fourth true void stage powerhouse in the Crimson Sky Kingdom will be born. Whether it was the students who were eating, or the students waiting for their food, the group of students within the cafeteria flowed out and followed them. A life and death battle. Such an event wasn't something that would happen every day. Food was something they could do without, but such a bustling event was something they couldn't miss. He's called Duan Lingtian. A red-clothed girl with a black whip in her hand followed them while being attended to by another woman. Her eyes flickered with a dense coldness. It was precisely Tong Li. Miss Li, that new student, Duan Lingtian, actually dared to challenge a grade 4 student, and it's even a life and death battle. He's dead for sure. This time there's someone to help you vent your grievances, the women that followed behind Tong Li said, with a light smile. Humph. Unfortunately, however, he couldn't die by my hand, but even if he's killed, I won't let his corpse off. Since I've said I'll tear him into pieces, I will do as I've said. Tong Li's voice was filled with a bone-piercing coldness that caused the woman behind her to be so scared that her face went pale. Chapter 0155. Under the lead of the old man, the group of Paladin Academy students moved forward in a massive stream towards the martial arts practice grounds. Xiao Yu walked beside Duan Lingtian as he asked, in a low voice, Duan Lingtian, are you confident? Xiao Xuan and Tianhu looked at Duan Lingtian as well. Now that things had progressed this far, they understood that they couldn't change anything and only hoped that Duan Lingtian would be able to survive this life and death battle. Have some confidence in me, okay? At a critical moment, it's still Su Li who understands me the best. Duan Lingtian shook his head and revealed a light smile. He had a composed appearance and seemed to be someone that was about to undergo a life and death battle. Xiao Yu and the others looked over at Su Li, and only now did they realize that Su Li had a similar composed appearance like Duan Lingtian. They heaved a sigh of relief. A trace of doubt appeared within Xiao Xuan's eyes, however. Could it be that Duan Lingtian concealed his strength when he battled Su Li? In the distance, Duan Rong walked beside Duan Lingxing. His gaze would occasionally flash past Duan Lingtian, and he noticed the indifferent expression on Duan Lingtian's face. His heart jerked as he felt even more uneasy within his heart. Cousin brother, that Duan Lingtian looks like he's extremely confident. You, Duan Rong gazed at Duan Lingxing, who was beside him, with a worried expression. HMPH. Duan Lingxing grunted coldly and interrupted Duan Rong. You call that having confidence? That's called arrogance. This Duan Lingtian is exactly like his short-lived father, their arrogance knows no bounds. Today, I'll spill his blood over Paladin Academy. In this way, not only will I be able to take revenge for you, I'll also be able to deal with this potential calamity. Actually, besides detesting Duan Lingtian's father for crippling his own father, the most important reason Duan Lingxing urgently wanted to kill Duan Lingtian was because he was worried that Duan Lingtian would return to the Duan clan. Although Duan Lingtian had left the Duan clan that year, his name still remained on the Duan clan's direct descendant registry, so he was still one of the Duan clan's direct descendants. If Duan Lingtian's natural talent were to be discovered by the other Duan clan members, they would surely welcome Duan Lingtian back to the Duan clan. That was something he didn't want to see happen at all. As such, he wanted to kill Duan Lingtian and remove all future troubles. Duan Rong went silent. In fact, he also wanted to kill Duan Lingtian, as the finger attack Duan Lingtian dealt him in the past practically crippled his entire hand, and caused it to be nearly impossible to be healed. The vast martial arts practice grounds was fully surrounded by a massive array of people before long. The gray-robed old man stood at the center of the crowd and looked at Duan Lingtian and Duan Lingxing before raising his hand and withdrawing a piece of paper from within his spatial ring. This was Paladin Academy's life and death contract. If there was an irreconcilable enmity between two parties that could not be quelled until one party died, then the students of Paladin Academy may sign a life and death contract. In this way, Paladin Academy would not have to look into or pursue the matter of either party's death. Affix your thumbprint. The old man lifted his hand before casually tossing the life and death contract, which was led by a gentle force to descend before Duan Lingxing. Duan Lingxing extended his hand and directly bit open his thumb before impressing his thumbprint onto the contract, following which he grunted coldly and tossed the life and death contract to Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian placed his thumbprint onto the contract as well. Life and death contract, established. After the old man retrieved the life and death contract, his gaze focused, and he said, in a low voice, since the two of you have signed the life and death contract, then the following battle will be a battle to the death. You two may rely on spirit weapons but are disallowed from using other external sources of strength such as inscriptions and the like. Disallowed from using inscriptions. Duan Lingtian's gaze slightly flickered, but he never planned on using an inscription anyway. 9th level of the core formation stage. Duan Lingtian wasn't surprised that Duan Lingxing was at such a cultivation level. Spirit weapons are allowed. I heard Duan Lingxing possesses a grade 8 spirit weapon called gold thread gloves. It can't be, this Duan Lingxing has a grade 8 spirit weapon. It's actually nothing strange, as Duan Lingxing's father is the Duan clan's second master. It isn't difficult for him to get a grade 8 spirit weapon for Duan Lingxing. You're right, however, wouldn't this mean that Duan Lingtian's situation is even more dangerous? Even if Duan Lingxing didn't have a grade 8 spirit weapon, do you think that Duan Lingtian would have any hope of survival? None of the students that gathered around to watch the show looked favorably upon Duan Lingtian. Grade 8 spirit weapon, Xiao Yu, Xiao Xuan, and Tian Hu's faces went grim. Damn it, if I knew that this life and death battle was going to happen, I would have borrowed a grade 8 spirit weapon from my elder brother. Xiao Xuan's face sank. Don't worry, that flexible sword of Duan Lingtian's is a grade 8 spirit weapon as well. Just as this moment, Su Li spoke. Xiao Yu and the others couldn't help but be surprised. How do you know? The other day, my sword was chipped at a few spots by his sword. The corners of Su Li's mouth twitched and seemed to be slightly pained for a brief moment. Xiao Yu and the others were finally enlightened. Su Li's sword was a grade 9 spirit weapon, and since Duan Lingtian's sword was able to chip Su Li's sword, then it would be a grade 8 spirit weapon without a doubt. Tian Hu exhaled a breath of cold air as he said, in astonishment, looks like he didn't use the full might of his grade 8 spirit weapon the other day. Xiao Yu and Xiao Xuan deeply agreed, and only Su Li's brows seemed to knit, neither indicating approval nor disapproval. That day, he suspected that Duan Lingtian hadn't used the might of his spirit weapon at all. Today when Duan Lingtian took the initiative to challenge Duan Lingxing and emitted such strong confidence, he instantly perceived that his suspicions weren't misplaced. Remember what I said. If either of you uses any source of external strength besides a spirit weapon, I will directly attack and kill him. The gray-robed old man's, also known as the Vice Dean of Paladin Academy, voice went cold abruptly before returning to normal. He said, in a clear voice, "Begin." The gray-robed old man moved aside as soon as he finished. Duan Lingtian, I'll send you on your way to hell right now and let you follow in your short-lived father's footsteps. Duan Lingxing had already put his gold-thread gloves on his hands, and a cold smile appeared on the corners of his mouth as his eyes emitted a cold light. Are all trash fond of talking nonsense? Duan Lingtian's eyes narrowed as he sneered. You're courting death. Duan Lingxing went completely berserk when he heard Duan Lingtian call him trash, and his body pounced towards Duan Lingtian as if he had transformed into a ferocious tiger that had fiercely pounced off a hill. Whoosh! Duan Lingxing's body flashed out with incredibly swift speed, as if he had transformed into a gust of wind, and he instantly arrived near Duan Lingtian. Above him, 12 ancient mammoth silhouettes condensed into form. He exerted his full strength the moment he launched his attack. Bang! Duan Lingxing's palm swept past the sky as the origin energy on it burst forth before crashing down to envelop Duan Lingtian. This palm strike seemed as if it could suppress everything. Above Duan Lingxing, another 2 ancient mammoths appeared, and this was precisely the amplification brought about by the Grade 8 spirit weapon. That palm strike from Duan Lingxing contains the strength of 14 ancient mammoths. The pupils of the surrounding students constricted and their hearts couldn't help but rise to their throats when they saw this. It seemed as if it wasn't Duan Lingtian that was facing this palm strike but them. Duan Lingtian didn't dare lightly defend when faced with Duan Lingxing's palm strike. Instead, his eyes went cold and he took a large stride forward. Spirit Serpent Movement Technique. Duan Lingtian's body seemed to transform into a flexible spirit serpent as he moved, barely avoiding Duan Lingxing's palm strike. And above him, 12 ancient mammoth silhouettes appeared. 9th level of the core formation stage. Duan Lingxing's pupils constricted, as never had he imagined that Duan Lingtian was a 9th level core formation martial artist as well. He suddenly felt as if he had been played. How could this be possible? This little bastard is only 18. How could he be a 9th level core formation martial artist? No, impossible. Duan Lingxing's heart was in chaos, as he was unwilling to believe that this was all true. Meanwhile, all of the surrounding spectating students of Paladin Academy were dumbstruck at this instant. This scene was totally unbelievable. This Duan Lingtian, a mere 18-year-old youth, a grade 1 student, he was actually a 9th level core formation martial artist. What natural talent was this? Wouldn't it be saying that he had a chance to step into the origin core stage before the age of 20? His natural talent even surpasses his father's. The Vice Dean's eyes flashed with a bright light. At this moment, a sense of regret arose within him. If he had known earlier that Duan Lingtian was a 9th level core formation martial artist, he would surely stop this life and death battle from happening. But unfortunately, the milk had already been spilled. Now he could only hope that Duan Lingtian would be able to survive, as he didn't want to see such a genius fall. Duan Lingtian is at the 9th level of the core formation stage. Practically at the same time, Xiao Yu, Xiao Xuan, and Tianhu were shocked as well. As expected, Su Li's pupils constricted as a bitter smile appeared on the corners of his mouth. Duan Lingtian had obviously concealed most of his strength during their battle the other day, otherwise, he wouldn't be a match for a single strike from Duan Lingtian. Impossible. How could this be possible? Tong Li's face was full of disbelief when she saw this scene. This youth that she hated to the bones was actually a martial artist at the 9th level of the core formation stage. Cousin. Duan Rong's face was ghastly pale, as he suddenly realized that the worry in his heart was not unwarranted. Everyone's reactions practically happened within the blink of an eye. On the martial arts practice ground. Even if you're a 9th level core formation martial artist as well, do you think you can dodge my palm strike like this? Duan Lingxing's voice emitted incomparable coldness as his descending palm strike that Duan Lingtian had just dodged abruptly turned to continue to envelop Duan Lingtian. It was as if it wouldn't stop until it annihilated Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingxing, this sword strike is for Li Zan. Just at this moment, Duan Lingtian, whose body flashed and was about to be caught up to by Duan Lingxing, suddenly spoke. His voice seemed to come from the depths of hell, as within the icy coldness, his voice was filled with breathtaking killing intent. Whoosh! Duan Lingtian's hand flashed before his waist as he drew his sword. Sword drawing arts. Sword drawing arts was devoted towards speed, accuracy, and ruthlessness. The violet myrtle flexible sword in Duan Lingtian's hand flashed out, and two more ancient mammoth silhouettes appeared above him in an instant. The strength behind this sword strike was equal to Duan Lingxing's palm strike, as both contained the strength of 14 ancient mammoths. Duan Lingtian's spirit weapon is a grade 8 spirit weapon as well. The surrounding crowd sounded with waves of exclamations. You think your sword strike is able to injure me? Duan Lingxing sneered when he saw Duan Lingtian's sword seeming to transform into a violet bolt of lightning as it flashed towards him, and his hand flipped to slap down towards the body of Duan Lingtian's violet myrtle flexible sword. Chapter 0156. Duan Lingtian sneered when he saw Duan Lingxing actually trying to stop his violet myrtle flexible sword. Violet myrtle flexible sword twisted in his hand, and moved to intercept Duan Lingxing's palm strike with the edge of the blade. Duan Lingxing's expression turned extremely grim. He dared to slap his palm down upon the body of the blade, but even if he had 10 times more courage, he would still not dare to slap his palm down upon the edge of the blade. Even though he wore a grade 8 spirit weapon on his hand, it would be impossible for it to go head to head with a sword that was a grade 8 spirit weapon as well. Do you expect this to work? Duan Lingxing sneered, as a solution flashed within his mind. He didn't withdraw his attack but instead continued to slap his palm down and circulate his defensive martial skill at the same time. A high-grade profound rank defensive martial skill at the perfection stage. Instantly, a defensive chi barrier suffused itself over his gold thread gloves, then his hand descended down and his palm stretched open before closing, actually directly grasping onto the violet myrtle flexible sword that Duan Lingtian swung out. The gold thread gloves were originally extremely tough and tensile, so ordinary blades were unable to cause any damage to it. Now that it was combined with a defensive chi barrier, Duan Lingxing was able to forcefully stop Duan Lingtian's sword strike, which contained the strength of 14 ancient mammoths, by using the same amount of strength. The strength of the two cancelled each other out. Just when the corners of Duan Lingxing's mouth emitted a ferocious smile and he was about to launch an attack against Duan Lingtian, an icy cold voice entered his ear. Did you think that this is all I'm capable of? In the next moment, Duan Lingxing's pupils constricted. Oh my god, what did I just see? Above Duan Lingtian, another ancient mammoth silhouette appeared, and added on to the 14 from before, there was a total of 15 ancient mammoth silhouettes above him. The strength of 15 ancient mammoths. No, impossible. How could he have a grade 8 spirit weapon? How could this be possible? Duan Lingxing's face went gloomy and his voice was filled with boundless fear. The first thought that appeared in his mind was that the spirit weapon within Duan Lingtian's hand wasn't a grade 8 spirit weapon but a grade 7 spirit weapon. After all, a 9th level core formation martial artist could only exert the strength of 15 ancient mammoths when relying upon a grade 7 spirit weapon, as a grade 7 spirit weapon was able to amplify nearly 30% of its user's strength. How could he know that the violet myrtle flexible sword within Duan Lingtian's wasn't a grade 7 spirit weapon at all? The raging python form of the 9 dragons war sovereign technique that Duan Lingtian cultivated allowed him to possess a strength of 12 ancient mammoths once he completed the tempering of his fleshly body for the 4th level of the core formation stage, which was comparable to a 9th level core formation martial artist, and when Duan Lingtian broke through to the 5th level of the core formation stage yesterday, he gained an extra ancient mammoth. Presently, even if he were to not use a spirit weapon, Duan Lingtian would still be capable of exerting the strength of 13 ancient mammoths, and if he were to use a spirit weapon, the strength of one more ancient mammoth would be readily available. At nearly the exact same moment, the crowd of spectating Paladin Academy students was dumbstruck. Grade 7 spirit weapon. Oh my god, Duan Lingtian actually has a grade 7 spirit weapon. Even the Duan clan probably doesn't have many grade 7 spirit weapons. Where did this Duan Lingtian obtain it? Their thoughts were exactly similar to Duan Lingxing. They all thought that Duan Lingtian was relying upon a grade 7 spirit weapon in order to exert the strength of 15 ancient mammoths. Grade 7 spirit weapon. The corners of Xiao Yu's, Xiao Xuan's, and Tianhu's mouths twitched and bitter smiles appeared on their faces, as they all felt that Duan Lingtian had concealed his strength too deeply. Even Su Li's gaze slightly flickered, as slight shock flashed within. How could he possibly have a grade 7 spirit weapon? Tong Li's face was extremely unsightly, and her hand that clenched the black whip grew tighter. Cousin. A sense of sorrow appeared on Duan Rong's face as he witnessed this scene. On the martial arts practice ground, Duan Lingxing's body trembled as if he had abruptly thought of some dreadful matter. His pupils constricted as his gaze descended upon the violet myrtle flexible sword grasped within Duan Lingtian's right hand. His heart trembled and was instantly filled with dread as he moved to withdraw his hand. How could Duan Lingtian know what Duan Lingxing was thinking when he saw Duan Lingxing's expression? Duan Lingtian sneered, and the violet myrtle flexible sword within his hand flashed out as he said, "What? Regret grabbing hold of my sword?" Whoosh! The strength of 15 ancient mammoths completely suppressed the strength of 14 ancient mammoths. And Duan Lingxing's defensive chi barrier shattered with a crash. Ah! At almost practically the same instant, a shrill cry echoed out from Duan Lingxing, as his palm was split into two. The other half of his palm crashed onto the ground, drenching the ground with blood. Duan Lingxing's body trembled, and when he once again gazed upon Duan Lingtian, his eyes were filled with boundless dread. That sword strike was for Li Zan. You probably still remember Li Zan, right? It's that little fatty that used his body to help defend me against your palm strike and saved my life 2 years ago. Duan Lingtian's icy cold gaze descended upon Duan Lingxing. That day, if it wasn't for little fatty Li Zan helping him defend against that palm strike, he would have already been killed by Duan Lingxing, and it would have been impossible for him to still be standing here. He once pledged that he would surely take revenge for Li Zan. Whoosh! Duan Lingtian's body flashed out as if it had transformed into a spirit serpent and closed in on Duan Lingxing, then he waved out his sword to strike once more. How could Duan Lingxing, who had lost his spirit weapon and been injured, dodge this extremely swift sword strike from Duan Lingtian? Instantly, Duan Lingxing emitted another shrill cry. His leg was forcefully sliced off by Duan Lingtian, and his entire body crashed down onto the ground, as it lost its support. His body violently trembled as he struggled with eyes filled with despair. At this moment, he wished so dearly for the scene before him to just be a dream, but unfortunately, the intense pain that he unceasingly felt allowed him to realize that this was no dream, but reality. That sword strike was for K'er. You still remember K'er, right? That young girl you injured after she swung her sword at you when you tried to kill me. Duan Lingtian walked step by step towards Duan Lingxing, and within his voice was a breathtaking coldness. The scenes from before flashed before his eyes. That time, he was nearly killed by Duan Lingxing. The gray-clothed old man, the vice dean of Paladin Academy, watched this bloody scene but had no intention of interfering. A life-and-death battle that was upheld by a life-and-death contract would only end when one party was dead. As the witness of the battle, he had to practice what he preached. Moreover, he had clearly heard and understood that Duan Lingxing had once tried to kill Duan Lingtian, and he finally came to an understanding as to why Duan Lingtian would detest Duan Lingxing to such an extent. So it turned out that there was an enmity to the point of life and death between the two of them. So this Duan Lingtian and Duan Lingxing had long ago formed an irreconcilable enmity. It's no wonder they would go at each other to the death the moment they met. They're both Duan clan direct descendants, but the difference between the two is just too huge. Duan Lingtian is merely 18, whereas Duan Lingxing seems to be 23 this year. Duan Lingtian defeated a direct descendant of his clan who's 5 years older than him, and his natural talent can be considered heaven-defying. As expected of the son of Duan Rufeng. This Duan Lingxing can't even amount to trash in front of him. At this moment, not one Paladin Academy student present felt pity for Duan Lingxing. A smile appeared on the faces of Xiao Yu and the others. Duan Lingtian had won. Duan Rong's body trembled violently and his face went ghastly pale as he watched the scene before him. Duan Lingtian, I'll surely make you die. Tong Li glanced at the violet-clothed youth in the distance with an icy cold gaze before turning around and leaving. On the martial arts practice ground. With great difficulty, Duan Lingxing used his origin energy to stop the blood that was spurting out of his injuries. There was not a trace of redness on his face, it was completely pale. As he gazed at Duan Lingtian, who was walking over with a bloody flexible sword in his hand, Duan Lingxing's body trembled and dread and despair appeared on his face. Duan Lingtian, you can't kill me. I'm your clan brother, we're both direct descendants of the Duan clan. You can't kill me. Duan Lingtian was stunned briefly. When he heard what Duan Lingxing said, he burst into laughter. Clan brother. A mocking smile appeared on Duan Lingtian's face. 2 years ago, when you tried to kill me in the Fresh Breeze Townley family, did you ever think that I was your clan brother? How about just now, when you desired to kill me, did you think that I was your clan brother? Now that you see that you've lost all your advantages and are at your wit's end, you call yourself my clan brother and hope I'll give you a chance at life. Don't you think it's ridiculous? The violet myrtle flexible sword within Duan Lingtian's hand was still dripping blood onto the ground, and wherever it passed, blood drenched the entire ground. After a moment, Duan Lingtian arrived before Duan Lingxing and slowly lifted the violet myrtle flexible sword. Duan Lingxing seemed to realize that Duan Lingtian wouldn't buy his nonsense. His face instantly went grim as he shouted, in a fierce voice, Duan Lingtian, if you kill me, my father and mother will definitely not let you off. You will undoubtedly die. That cripple. Duan Lingtian laughed indifferently. The power that my parents control is far from anything you can imagine, and you wouldn't kill me if you were sensible. Duan Lingxing made his last attempt at a struggle before death. However, Duan Lingtian was unfazed. This sword strike is for myself. Under Duan Lingxing's despaired gaze, the sword within Duan Lingtian's grasp whistled down and flashed past Duan Lingxing's throat. Splurt. Instantly, blood shot out. Duan Lingxing's eyes that were filled with despair were open wide as his body crashed onto the ground. The injuries that he had stopped from bleeding once again flowed with fresh blood. Duan Lingxing, dead. Clang. Duan Lingtian sheathed his violet myrtle flexible sword. A smile appeared on the corners of his mouth. This was a smile of relief. There hadn't been a moment within this last 2 years that he didn't think about killing Duan Lingxing to avenge the enmity of that day. Now, everything had finally ended. Ha 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 ha, Duan Lingtian couldn't help but burst out laughing, as he felt extremely delighted in his heart, and the sound of his laughter echoed out throughout the deathly silent martial arts practice ground. Besides the Vice Dean of Paladin Academy, Xiao Yu, and the others of their group, every other Paladin Academy student gazed at the violet-clothed youth that stood in the distance with gazes filled with terror. This youth was too terrifying. If he was this terrifying at the mere age of 18, once he grows and matures, how heaven-defying will he become? After a moment, Duan Lingtian took a deep breath and eased up his excited mood, then he walked over to Xiao Yu and the others with a wide grin on his face. Let's go have some food. Everyone was speechless for some time. They all glanced at Duan Lingxing's corpse on the martial arts practice ground, and their hearts trembled. This Duan Lingtian still has the appetite to eat now. The gray-clothed old man, or in other words, the Vice Dean of Paladin Academy, gazed at Duan Lingtian's disappearing figure. His eyes narrowed and a smile appeared on the corners of his mouth. This little fellow's slightly interesting. Chapter 158, Duan Clan. Paladin Academy, Cafeteria. Duan Lingtian's group was sitting at the table, and Duan Lingtian was gulping down his food as if what happened earlier didn't affect him in any way. On the other hand, Xiao Yu, Xiao Xuan and Tian who seemed to have lost their appetite, as the bloody scenes from before still flashed before their eyes and they still found it difficult to toss it out of their minds. Only Su Li was similar to Duan Lingtian and was not affected in any way. Duan Lingtian, you have concealed your ability too deeply. 9th level of the core formation stage, grade 7 spirit weapon. If it wasn't for the life and death battle between you and Duan Lingxing, we probably would still be kept in the dark by you. Tian who sighed with a bitter smile on his face. Before Duan Lingtian, the natural talent that he had so much in pride didn't even amount to trash. But he also knew that he couldn't compare himself with this freak, or else he would only batter himself. Exactly, even I've been deceived all along. Xiao Yu's gaze focused, and his gaze was extremely complicated. He originally thought that Duan Lingtian was only slowly moving further away and that he still had the chance to catch up to Duan Lingtian's figure on the path towards the peak of the martial Tao. But who would have known that Duan Lingtian's true strength had long since thrown him far off into the distance, causing him to be only capable of catching sight of Duan Lingtian's dust. What I never would have expected was your identity. You're actually the son of Duan Rufeng, a direct descendant of the Duan clan. Xiao Xuan's pupils constricted as he looked at Duan Lingtian. He was slightly surprised. I'm the son of Duan Rufeng, but I have no relationship with the Duan clan. Duan Lingtian's gaze focused as he spoke indifferently. He was extremely disdainful of the Duan clan and was unwilling to admit that he was a member of the Duan clan. Xiao Xuan was stunned for a moment, then he glanced deeply at Duan Lingtian and said no more. He discerned that Duan Lingtian had no favorable impression towards the Duan clan. At the same time that Duan Ling Tian was enjoying his food, Duan Rong had brought along Duan Ling Xing's mangled body and returned to the Duan clan estate. In the vast courtyard, Duan Ling Xing lied there, the blood within his body had long since run dry. Xing, tremors ran through the ground as a 300-plus pound married woman pounced over. Tears flowed down from her small, red eyes, and she was unwilling to believe that this was real. A figure moved like lightning from outside the courtyard. As he swiftly walked in, his voice sounded like explosive thunder. Son. This was a middle-aged man with an imposing appearance. He was obviously someone who has held a high position for a long period of time. He arrived before the corpse within the courtyard, and his eyes were red as well. Dense hatred was budding within his heart at this moment. No matter who it is, I'll surely burn your bones and scatter your ashes for killing my son. Duan Rulei's voice was filled with a sense of ruthlessness. Second brother, I heard that Duan Ling Xing. Another figure dashed into the courtyard and was dumbstruck as he gazed at the corpse on the ground. He was precisely the fourth master of the Duan clan, Duan Ru Hong. Before long, 3 old men slowly walked into the courtyard. They were led by a middle-aged man who wore a white robe with gold lining. This middle-aged man had a firm and resolute expression and an extraordinary disposition. Every movement of his emitted overbearing dignity, and his identity was easily discerned, the Duan clan's patriarch, Duan Ru Huo. Second brother, sister-in-law, you have my condolences. Duan Ru Huo sighed as he gazed at Duan Rulei and his wife. Second brother, what happened? Duan Ru Hong had a grim expression and his voice seemed constrained, and within it was a trace of dense fury. I just returned as well. Duan Rulei looked at the fat woman beside him. The fat woman's red eyes focused on Duan Rong, who was standing at the side. It was Duan Rong who brought Xing's body back. Rong, who the hell killed your cousin? Toward the end of that sentence, her voice started trembling, and her eyes emitted a vicious gaze. Instantly, the gazes of everyone within the courtyard descended upon Duan Rong. Duan Rong became the center of attention. His eyes turned, his body trembled, and he said, in a low voice, Auntie, it's Duan Ling Tian, it's Duan Ling Tian who did it. Duan Ling Tian. The fat woman was startled and was unable to react for a moment. What did you say? The Duan clan's fourth master, Duan Ru Hong's, face went grim as he looked at Duan Rong with a burning gaze. Which Duan Ling Tian? Duan Ling Tian was a name that wasn't unfamiliar to him. The son of his third brother, Duan Ru Feng, was called Duan Ling Tian as well, and he had met him once 2 years ago when he went out to run some errands with Duan Ling Xing and passed by Fresh Breeze Town. The son of Duan Ru Feng, Duan Ling Tian. Duan Rong gnashed his teeth as he spoke. Besides Duan Ru Hong, the other people present were not able to react to the name, Duan Ling Tian, for some time. But Duan Ru Feng, mention of this name instantly caused the people present to awaken from their daze. Impossible, Duan Ru Hong said, in an icy cold voice. I met Duan Ling Tian 2 years ago, and he was only a body-tempering martial artist at that time. It's only been 2 years, how could he possibly have the strength to kill Ling Xing? Moreover, it's impossible for him to be at the Imperial City right now. Duan Ru Hong obviously didn't believe him. It's true. Seeing that the gazes of everyone present were becoming filled with doubt, Duan Rong hurriedly explained that Duan Ling Tian should be around the age of 18, and he's at Paladin Academy right now. And just a while ago. Duan Rong slowly explained the sequence of events with a trembling voice and a pair of red eyes. Duan Ling Tian, 18 years old, 9th level of the core formation stage. Grade 7 spirit weapon. What Duan Rong said caused the hearts of everyone present to tremble, and even Duan Ru Hong's pupils couldn't help but constrict. That youth that was only at the body tempering stage 2 years ago had already become an existence at the core formation stage now. After they confirmed that the person who killed Duan Ling Xing was precisely Duan Ling Tian, a sense of helplessness and bitterness arose within his heart, as both of them were equally important. So it's that little bastard. The fat woman's voice seemed to come from the deepest pits of hell and was bone-piercingly cold. Life and death contract, why didn't you dissuade Duan Ling Xing at that time? Patriarch Duan Ru Huo's gaze focused onto Duan Rong as he asked this in a low voice. Duan Rong laughed bitterly. I tried, but cousin wouldn't listen to me at all. Moreover, I didn't know that Duan Ling Tian's strength was so formidable. It's really the son of Ru Feng. Ru Feng's son stepped into the 9th level of the core formation stage at the mere age of 18. His natural talent even surpasses Ru Feng's. Patriarch, since Ling Xing was killed after validating the life and death contract, we can only blame Duan Ling Xing for being overconfident in the matter. Besides that Duan Ling Tian is the son of Duan Rufeng and is a direct descendant of our Duan clan. He should rightfully acknowledge his ancestors and return to the clan. The three old men behind Duan Ruhuo, who were also the elders of the Duan clan, spoke out. Within their eyes was a trace of excitement. Since Duan Ling Xing validated the life and death contract, not to mention dying at the hands of Duan Ling Tian, even if he had died by the hand of another, the Duan clan would still have no reason to interfere. Presently, all their thoughts were focused on the one who killed Duan Ling Xing, Duan Ling Tian, as the natural talent in the martial Dao that Duan Ling Tian exhibited caused them to feel excited. That year, everyone within the Duan clan felt that Duan Rufeng had a chance to become a true void stage expert and to lead the Duan clan to glory, to compete with the imperial family. But unfortunately, Duan Rufeng vanished later on. Now, years later, the son of Duan Rufeng appeared, and his natural talent even surpassed Duan Rufeng's, allowing them to see hope. To them, and to the Duan clan, Duan Ling Tian was their hope. For the sake of the Duan clan, not to mention Duan Ling Tian and Duan Ling Xing had validated a life and death contract before their battle. Even if they didn't, the Duan clan would still not blame Duan Ling Tian for killing Duan Ling Xing. Duan Ling Tian's worth was something 100 Duan Ling Xings couldn't compare to. In this world where the strong were revered, this was reality, cold, hard reality. This was precisely the brutality of the large clans. If you can bring benefit to the clan, then you're a treasure. If you can't, you're just a bunch of grass. Elders, what's the meaning of this? The fat woman's small eyes flashed when she heard what the three old men said, and said in melancholy, Ling Xing is a direct descendant of the Duan clan. Even if he was careless and validated a life and death contract, that little bastard shouldn't have killed him. Ling Xing is his clan brother. Such a ruthless little bastard should die. If he were to enter the Duan clan, there is no saying what would happen. If the clan is unwilling to interfere in this matter, then I, Yun Ping, will take matters into my own hands. When the fat woman finished speaking, her voice was filled with bone-deep coldness. The three old men's expressions went grim. This woman dared to refute them. Even the Duan clan's patriarch, Duan Ruhuo's, expression sank at this moment. He shouted in a low voice, "Sister-in-law, you're too presumptuous." At this moment, the thoughts in the heart of Duan Ruhuo was similar to the three elders' thoughts, as he was the Duan clan's patriarch and needed to think for the Duan clan. Slap. Suddenly, the sound of a slap resounded in the air. It was Duan Rulei who given the fat woman, his wife, Yun Ping, a slap. You hit me." Yun Ping was stunned. Her son had died and all she had said were some words from her heart, but her husband had actually hit her. "Yes, I hit you, you ignorant woman." Duan Rulei raised his hand and gave Yun Ping another slap. Only now did he respectfully look at Duan Ruhuo and the three old men. "Patriarch, three elders, this matter was something my son brought upon himself, and there's no one else to be blamed for it. Duan Rulei knows what should be done and what shouldn't. I hope Patriarch and the three elders can be at ease." "Not bad, Rulei. For once you see the bigger picture." The three elders nodded in satisfaction. Only Patriarch Duan Ruhuo's pupils constricted as he glanced deeply at Duan Rulei. "Second brother, I hope you are true to your word. If you're not, I'll be disappointed, and the clan will be disappointed as well." Duan Rulei's body trembled as he hurriedly said, "Yes, Patriarch." "Fourth brother, you'll be in charge of bringing that kid Ling Tian back to the clan. He's suffered too much hardships outside of the clan, and the Duan clan will properly compensate him." Duan Ruhuo looked at Duan Ruhong as he slowly spoke. "Yes, Patriarch." Duan Ruhong hurriedly accepted his orders, and he sighed in his heart because he knew that Duan Ling Xing had died for no reason. Duan Rong was completely muddle-headed as he watched the Duan clan's patriarch and the elders leave one by one. This matter had come to an end just like this. "Second brother, second sister-in-law, the outcome was inevitable, you have my condolences." Duan Ruhong consoled Duan Rulei and his wife before walking off in swift strides. "You're really not taking revenge for our son?" After noticing the outsiders leaving, the fat woman's small eyes became filled with a bloody redness as she looked at her husband and spoke in a cold voice. Chapter 159, Dragon Blood Pill. "Ignorant woman." Duan Rulei coldly swept the married woman with his gaze before glancing at Duan Rong. "Rong, you return first." Remember, under no circumstances are you to provoke that Duan Ling Tian. Yes, uncle. Duan Rong had a bitter expression on his face as he replied and left. Duan Roulé, let me tell you that if you don't take revenge for our son, I'll go back to my clan today. The fat woman's pair of small eyes were filled with a breathtaking coldness as she coldly spoke. Although her clan was inferior to the Duan clan, as far as she was concerned, it was still more than enough to kill Duan Ling Tian. HMPH, do you think Xing is only your son? The hatred within my heart isn't one bit weaker than yours. You saw the attitude of the patriarch and the three elders. If I were to be struck dazed by the hatred within me, I can imagine how the clan will try every means possible to revoke my authority for the sake of protecting Duan Ling Tian. Duan Roulé's voice was chilly and revealed a dense coldness hidden within. I hit you earlier because I was putting up a show in front of the patriarch and the three elders to make them put down their guard against me. Only then would I be able to let them be at ease. In this way, I'll have the chance to secretly find a way to kill that little bastard. Hearing what he said caused the eyes of the fat woman to shine, and her face emitted an ashamed expression. Duan Rufeng crippled my Dantian that day and caused my life to be no better than death. Now that his son has killed mine, old accounts and new combined, I must burn that Duan Ling Tian's bones and scatter his ashes. Duan Roulé's voice was mixed with a shocking coldness of the highest degree. Since noon, Paladin Academy was bustling with activity and noise for the entire afternoon, as the news of today's life and death battle had spread across the academy. Duan Ling Tian, the son of the Duan clan's former peerless genius, Duan Rufeng, exhibited a strength at the 9th level of the core formation stage at the mere age of 18 and annihilated Duan Ling Xing of the same clan. Duan Ling Tian, a grade 1 student, easily slaughtered a grade 4 student. All of Paladin Academy was alarmed. The news slowly spread out from the Paladin Academy, so it probably wouldn't be too long before everyone within the entire Imperial City's inner city, and even the Imperial City's outer city, heard of this shocking piece of news. Another peerless genius had appeared within the Duan clan. However, Duan Ling Tian, who was the main party in the news, was presently lazily lying on a large tree at the corner of the martial arts practice ground. His eyes were narrow as he enjoyed the sunlight that passed through the leaves and shined on his body. Xiao Yu and Xiao Xuan were discussing the martial Dao and sparring with others not far away. Some of the grade 1 students who were in the Star Mastermind department with Duan Ling Tian would occasionally glance at him with eyes that emitted a trace of fear. Although they had felt that this youth wasn't simple, they never expected him to be so ferocious. Moreover, his identity was shocking. Teacher Sima. Suddenly, a middle-aged man who was wearing a silk headdress and held a feather fan arrived at the corner where the grade 1 Star Mastermind department students were, and the group of students respectfully bowed. Teacher. Duan Ling Tian only reacted when he noticed that Sima Chongfeng had arrived before him. Whoosh! Sima Chongfeng's leg jerked and a gentle force sprang him up before descending on the tree beside Duan Ling Tian. The tree only slightly shook before coming to a stop. Duan Ling Tian's gaze shone when he saw this. This was something no ordinary person was capable of, and obviously this grade 1 Star Mastermind department teacher's strength was extraordinary. Moreover, Duan Ling Tian noticed that Sima Chongfeng's aura was reserved, so even he wasn't able to see through the approximate level at which Sima Chongfeng's cultivation was at when relying upon the experience and formidable spiritual force of the rebirth martial emperor. Why did you say you weren't a member of the Duan clan the other day? Sima Chongfeng glanced deeply at Duan Ling Tian. He obviously had heard of the matter that took place at noon. I only found out about my origin 2 years ago. I only know that ever since I could remember, my mother and I relied on each other to survive. I knew virtually nothing of any Duan clan, nor did I receive any kindness from the Duan clan. I have never once considered myself to be a member of the Duan clan. Not in the past, not now, and not in the future. Duan Ling Tian lightly smiled. So, what I said was the truth. Sima Chongfeng shook his head. The blood of the Duan clan flows within you after all. So what? Duan Ling Tian didn't confirm nor deny it. I can't change my birth, but my future path is controlled with my own 2 hands, and no one is able to stop me. Teacher, I wonder what relationship you have with the Duan clan to actually be an emissary for them. As he finished speaking, Duan Ling Tian deeply glanced at Sima Chongfeng. His gaze that was filled with wisdom was definitely not something a youth should possess. Kid, you are really a sly little fox. Sima Chongfeng didn't get angry from being seen through by Duan Ling Tian. I don't have any relationship with the Duan clan. However, the Duan clan's fourth master, Duan Ruhong, is a good friend of mine, and I'm precisely here on his behalf. The Duan clan's fourth master. Duan Lingtian's eyes constricted. He couldn't help but recall that day in Fresh Breeze Town when he met the middle-aged man with extraordinary bearing that his mother asked him to call fourth uncle. He is Duan Ruhong. After a moment, Duan Lingtian returned to his senses, then he looked at Sima Chongfeng. Teacher, then please send a message to Duan Ruhong for me. I, Duan Lingtian, was no longer a member of the Duan clan since the moment I left the Duan clan with my mother. Sima Chongfeng was slightly moved. Duan Lingtian, this matter can be a minor or major incident, so you have to consider things carefully. Teacher, you're worried that the Duan clan will pursue the matter of Duan Lingxing the moment I refuse? Duan Lingtian asked with a laugh. The life and death battle between you and Duan Lingxing was held after the validation of a life and death contract, so the Duan clan has no reason to interfere. However, your decision will undoubtedly place you in danger. The father of Duan Lingxing, the Duan clan's second master, Duan Rulei, is no simple figure. If you return to the Duan clan, it will be akin to another layer of protection, and that Duan Rulei won't dare act rashly. Sima Chongfeng spoke with confidence and went straight to the heart of the matter. Thank you for your concern, teacher, but I've made my decision. Duan Lingtian lightly smiled. He could feel Sima Chongfeng's heartfelt concerns and his heart felt warm. However, a mere Duan Rulei was still incapable of forcing him back to the Duan clan. It would fine and well if that Duan Rulei didn't come provoke him. If he were to come, then Duan Lingtian wouldn't mind making a cripple into a dead man. As he thought up to this point, a trace of a terrifying cold light flashed within Duan Lingtian's eyes. Since you've come to a decision, then I will say no more. Sima Chongfeng nodded. He was a smart person and knew that if he were to continue trying to persuade Duan Lingtian, it would only lead to aversion from him. Before long, as if he had thought of something, Sima Chongfeng changed the topic. There's another matter. The current political situation in the western border is in unrest, and it's very possible that a war might break out. At that time, once the war breaks out, our Paladin Academy will send some students as reinforcements, and the first ones to be considered will be our Star Mastermind Department students. If it really comes to that, are you interested in going? Once you serve a meritorious service, you will be conferred a title of nobility by the imperial family and be able to soar into the sky in one go. Duan Lingtian's eyes shone as he nodded. If I really have the chance, then I do want to go experience it. As a weapons specialist that had crossed over to this world from Earth, Duan Lingtian's bones were filled with hot blood. The places he yearned for the most were the battlefields of past and present, where armies would fight against each other and a general would become renowned over the corpses of 10,000 soldiers. That was the true battlefield that belonged to iron-blooded men. A gale rose and swept the clouds across the sky, and a hero rode out and was gone with the wind. What a lofty sentiment and aspiration that was. It's good that you're interested. Sima Chongfeng nodded with a smile before flying off the tree, waving his feather fan, and leaving in an elegant manner. After Sima Chongfeng left, Duan Lingtian sat up, closed his eyes, and started cultivating. 9 Dragons War Sovereign Technique, Raging Python Form. The 5th level core formation stage origin energy within his body unceasingly poured out and gathered in every spot within his body. It started to temper his fleshly body and strengthen his lifeblood. After an afternoon of time, his progress was next to nothing. If I continue at this speed, I might still be at the core formation stage when Kair and Li Fei step into the origin core stage. A trace of bitterness appeared on the corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth. There were times when the slow advancements of the raging python form caused him a headache. Although his current strength was considered outstanding among his peers, the potential threats that he currently faced weren't from his peers. Even though he could rely on his inscriptions, that wasn't his own strength. It was all right to use them occasionally, but if he were to use them frequently, he wouldn't be able to afford to keep making more. Although I can refine the dragon blood pill that is within the memories of Rebirth Martial Emperor, and the other materials are only ordinary, where am I to get the main material, dragon blood? Duan Lingtian was extremely frustrated. According to the memories of Rebirth Martial Emperor, if he were to have dragon blood pills to assist him as he cultivated the raging python form, then it would provide him a yield of twice the result with half the effort. Once he consumes a dragon blood pill, its medicinal strength will be able to instantly assist him in completing the tempering of his fleshly body at every level. In other words, if he had dragon blood pills, Duan Lingtian would be able to directly charge towards the next cultivation level like an ordinary core formation martial artist and wouldn't need to care about the tempering of his fleshly body. The medicinal strength of the dragon blood pill would be able to instantly complete the tempering of the fleshly body. This way, his cultivation speed would obtain a huge increase, as he wouldn't have to spend so much time tempering his fleshly body. At that time, it wouldn't be impossible for him to catch up to the cultivation levels of Li Fei and Kair. Dragon blood pill, dragon blood. According to the memories of Rebirth Martial Emperor, even the weakest dragon, the flood dragon, is a demon beast at the void prying stage. Even if I were to really encounter one, how would I obtain its blood? Duan Lingtian felt his head ache. Just at this moment, hiss hiss, the little black python stuck its head out from inside Duan Lingtian's sleeve. It stared at Duan Lingtian as it flicked its tongue, and its small eyes spun about. What did you come out for? You aren't a dragon. Duan Lingtian angrily glared at Little Black. However, when his gaze descended upon the single horn that had completely revealed itself atop the little black python's head, his gaze abruptly shone. Maybe. Chapter 160. Extracting blood to refine pills. According to the memories of Rebirth Martial Emperor, a dragon is the evolved form of a flood dragon, and a flood dragon is the evolved form of a python. Once there is a bulge atop the head of a python, it means that it has started its evolution into a flood dragon, and when the bulge opens to reveal a dragon's horn, then it will have completed its evolution into a flood dragon. Although the flood dragon is still slightly inferior to a true dragon, half-dragon blood still flows within its veins. Half-dragon blood was still dragon blood, and it satisfied the requirements to refine the dragon blood pill. This little fellow used to have a bulge atop his head, and it later opened up to reveal this sharp, golden, single horn. If it's according to the memories of Rebirth Martial Emperor, this little fellow isn't a pure python anymore but a flood dragon. Duan Lingtian stared at Little Black with a burning gaze. He wished for nothing more than to extract blood from him right now. Hiss hiss, Little Black seemed to have perceived danger from Duan Lingtian's gaze, so it flicked its tongue a few times before transforming into a bolt of lightning and scurrying back into Duan Lingtian's sleeve. Little Black, don't even think of running. I've decided that I'll extract blood from you tonight. If your blood can really refine the dragon blood pill, I'll surely get you tasty things to eat. Duan Lingtian extended his hand and pulled Little Black out. An evil smile appeared on the corners of his mouth. Hiss hiss, Little Black struggled unceasingly. At dusk, Duan Lingtian, Xiao Yu, and Xiao Xuan walked out of Paladin Academy. After they parted ways, he returned directly home. After ordering Shang Quan to purchase the remaining medicinal materials required for the dragon blood pill, Duan Lingtian caught a hold of the little black python that tried to escape. Scoundrel, what did you do to Little Black? Why's he so afraid of you? Li Fei was stunned when she saw the scene. Kaor looked at Duan Lingtian as well. She noticed that the little white python that was coiled around her hand seemed to have noticed something, as its body started to tremble lightly. I'll tell you later. Duan Lingtian smiled mysteriously before he carried off Little Black into his room. Duan Lingtian held Little Black in one hand and withdrew his violet myrtle flexible sword with the other, exuding a bearing that seemed like he was sharpening the knife to start the slaughter. Hiss hiss, a trace of terror appeared within Little Black's eyes. Little Black, be good, I just need a little blood. Duan Lingtian calmed him in a low voice. Under Duan Lingtian's calming, the restless little black python slowly settled down. Meanwhile, the violet myrtle flexible sword in Duan Lingtian's hand transformed into a sword light as it flashed towards the little python's body. Clang! Unexpectedly, it was unable to leave even a mark on the little black python's body. Duan Lingtian was stunned. Never had he imagined that the little black python's defense was so formidable. Duan Lingtian slowly increased the strength he used. In the end, he shockingly realized that even if he were to use the strength of 15 ancient mammoths, he actually wouldn't have any way of breaking through Little Black's defense. He gave up. You really are a little freak. With such strong defense, how am I supposed to extract blood from you? Duan Lingtian had a bitter smile and a face full of helplessness. Just when he was thinking about asking Shang Quan to help, the little black python turned its eyes to meet Duan Lingtian's gaze before lightly nodding and biting its own tail. Instantly, drops of golden blood dripped downwards. Duan Lingtian didn't hesitate. He hurriedly moved over the small bottle that he had prepared earlier and collected all the golden blood. After a short moment, the wound on Little Black's tail healed as if it was never wounded in the first place. However, Little Black's spirit seemed to be extremely exhausted, so it fell asleep instantly. Was it too much? Shaking the golden blood within the small bottle, the corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth had a trace of a bitter smile because he felt guilty in his heart. I hope it works, or else Little Black will have suffered for nothing. Duan Lingtian sighed as he withdrew his pill cauldron and started refining the dragon blood pill. The dragon blood pill wasn't difficult to refine. The first step was to completely refine and dissolve all the other ordinary medicinal materials. This step only required an hour. After an hour, Duan Lingtian took a deep breath. As his eyes gleamed with anticipation, he withdrew a drop of golden blood from the small bottle and dripped it into the cauldron. Duan Lingtian watched with utmost concentration. Bang! Suddenly, a loud sound echoed out from within the cauldron, and it started to tremble. Duan Lingtian's face went grim as he extended his hand to fiercely pin the cauldron down. The cauldron trembled unceasingly for an entire 10 minutes or so before finally stopping. What's going on? Duan Lingtian was slightly perturbed. Even he didn't know if the dragon blood pill was refined successfully. Whoosh! A low sound of something whistling through the wind sounded in his ears. Duan Lingtian's hand flashed out to directly grab onto the medicinal pill that flew out of the cauldron. He opened his hand to look. This was a medicinal pill that flashed with a golden luster, and even its looks were extraordinary. This is the dragon blood pill. Duan Lingtian took a deep breath before opening his mouth and consuming the dragon blood pill. As it entered his body, Duan Lingtian noticed the dragon blood pill splitting into two types of medicinal effects. One of the effects concealed itself within his dantian, and the other drew out the origin energy within his dantian and inserted it into every part of his body. When the medicinal strength disappeared, he could clearly feel that his body tempering for the 5th level of the core formation stage had been completed. He lightly clenched his fist. Whoosh! 14 ancient mammoth silhouettes condensed into form above Duan Lingtian. Compared to before, he had gained an extra strength of 1 ancient mammoth. It's a success. In the future, I can finally cultivate like a normal core formation martial artist. The other medicinal effect that the dragon blood pill divided itself into, why is it still within my dantian? Duan Lingtian examined his dantian and noticed that the medicinal effect seemed to be akin to something that had entered his body and was difficult to remove. This medicinal effect had stopped within his dantian and refused to leave. There's no information about such circumstances within the memories of the rebirth martial emperor. Could it be because of Little Black's golden blood? I don't feel it acting up, so I'll leave it be. Duan Lingtian frowned for a moment before easing up, and paid no attention to it anymore. Duan Lingtian continued to cultivate the 9-Dragon War Sovereign technique. After he closed his eyes, he was charging towards the 6th level of the core formation stage. Duan Lingtian, however, wasn't aware that at this very moment, the news of his origin and him killing Duan Lingxing had spread all over the imperial city. No matter whether it was the restaurants of the inner or outer city, they were all filled with discussions about him. Tian, Li Ru's voice sounded from outside his door, causing Duan Lingtian to be jolted awake from his cultivation. Mom, is something the matter? Duan Lingtian spoke as he moved to open the door. What he saw was his mother stand before the door, and her incomparably beautiful face had an indistinct trace of fury. Mom, what's wrong? Duan Lingtian's heart jerked. Are the news that are spreading outside true? You killed your second uncle's son. Li Ru's voice was low, as she was intentionally suppressing her fury. If it wasn't for her overhearing the discussion of the 2 servant girls in the house, she, who had not left the house, would have been completely unaware of the news that spread and gave rise to much discussion in the imperial city. The Duan clan's Duan Rufeng's son, Duan Lingtian, killed his clan brother, Duan Lingxing. Yes, Duan Lingtian nodded, as he didn't plan on concealing the truth. Why? Li Ru's voice was filled with fury. That's the son of your second uncle, your clan brother. Mom, come in and have a seat. Duan Lingtian brought his mother into the room and asked her to sit down. Only then did he slowly say, Mom, even if you were even more furious about this matter, I still wouldn't regret it. Could it be that you've forgotten how Li Zan was nearly killed by him that day? Li Zan blocked that palm strike for me, and if it wasn't for Li Zan, I would have been killed by Duan Lingxing that day. This time, if it wasn't for his desire to kill me, he wouldn't have validated the life and death contract. He felt that he would undoubtedly win, so he agreed to my life and death battle challenge. He wanted to kill me, could it be that I couldn't kill him? Duan Lingtian's voice was firm and tenacious. Li Ru's expression started to ease up as she heard what Duan Lingtian said, then she sighed. Even if he had done more wrong, for the sake of your father, why not spare his life? Your father crippled his father's dantian that year and caused his father to be unable to condense origin energy again for his entire life. Mom, you're extremely clear on what happened that year. If it wasn't for Duan Rulei being overbearing, why else would father have crippled his dantian? Moreover, that Duan Rulei isn't a good person. For the sake of his nephew, he sent 2 9th-level origin core martial artists to kill me yesterday. After he finished speaking, Duan Lingtian's eyes flashed with a terrifying coldness. What? Li Ru's face went grim. That Duan Rulei sent people to kill you? Yes. Duan Lingtian nodded, then he slowly spoke of the conflict between him and Duan Rong, as well as the following events. Mom, I know you've been feeling guilty in father's stead, but that Duan Rulei doesn't think of it that way. Their entire family wishes for nothing more than to tear me to pieces, and I just made the first move. Never mind, never mind. Li Ru shook her head and sighed. It's mother who wrongly blamed you today. However, you must be careful no matter what you do in the future. Besides that, those 2 fiancés of yours aren't weaklings. Li Ru still remembered that after her husband vanished, the people that targeted her were practically all put up to it by Duan Rulei's wife, Yun Ping. After finding out about that, it was precisely because she was worried that Yun Ping would harm Duan Lingtian that she left the Duan clan. Mom, don't worry. Duan Lingtian nodded with a smile. When have you seen me do something I'm not confident in? Li Ru extended her hand to brush Duan Lingtian's face. Her clear eyes contained a complicated expression. Ever since you were heavily injured by Li Xin, mother noticed that you changed a lot. Sometimes, mother even feels that you've become unfamiliar. However, no matter how you change, you'll always be mother's son. Your devotion to mother has never faltered, mother is proud. Halfway into Li Ru's speech, Duan Lingtian's heart jerked. Only after Li Ru finished speaking did he heave a sigh of relief. Mom, no matter when, I'll always be your son, a son you can be proud of. Duan Lingtian said, with a serious expression. Mother believes in you. Li Ru lightly nodded and a heartfelt smile appeared on her face.